Floating on cloud nine, basking in the euphoria of marrying the love of my life, I never anticipated the storm brewing on the horizon. The tempest arrived in a deceptively innocent package addressed to my mother-in-law. Curiosity piqued, I eagerly tore it open, only to be confronted with a revelation that would shatter the tranquility of our newlywed bliss. In an instant, the harmony between my husband and me unraveled into a nightmare, orchestrated by forces I had never imagined. But I refused to be ensnared in her web of manipulation. My name is Jessica, and just 6 months ago, I joyously wed my husband, David. Our future shimmered with promise, a canvas awaiting the brushstrokes of cherished memories. Yet fate had other plans, unveiling its cruel twist a mere month after our nuptials. As I tended to our home, embracing my role as a dedicated homemaker, the doorbell's chime shattered the tranquility. A parcel, a harbinger of chaos, bore the name of its sender. My mother-in-law. A parcel from my mother-in-law? Intriguing. There had been no prior mention of any such delivery, and David seemed equally unaware. Piqued by curiosity, I untied the knots, securing the box. Within, an unexpected assortment greeted me, clothing, not the stylish ensembles one might anticipate, but rather a collection bearing the unmistakable signs of age and wear. "What is this?" I stammered, bewildered by the sight before me. "Old clothes," came the curt response. I was dumbfounded by the array of garments, some marred by telltale signs of use, others adorned with holes and frays. Among them, relics of bygone fashion eras lingered, now reduced to gaudy remnants of their former glory. As I grappled with this peculiar offering, the shrill ring of the phone pierced the air, a timely interruption from none other than my mother-in-law. "Oh, Jessica dear, did you get my gift?" No. No. How can you call that a gift? They're clearly old clothes, and they're hideous. Who could possibly consider this a gift? As I stood there, bewildered by the unexpected situation, my mother-in-law began to explain casually. "You see, those clothes are ones I used to wear a long time ago. I found them while tidying up my closet." But mother-in-law, some of them have holes in them." "Don't worry, dear. I included some new ones I bought recently. Please try them on." Despite my confusion, my mother-in-law chattered away cheerfully. Was this harassment, or was it genuine kindness? Honestly, I couldn't decipher her true intentions. When my husband David came home from work, he immediately noticed the mountain of old clothes. "Did Mom give you a gift? That's nice." It felt more like she was offloading them rather than gifting them. Even so, if my mother-in-law's intentions were kind, I didn't want to seem ungrateful. So I did mention the holes or the poor taste to David. A month later, another package arrived from her. As expected, it was filled entirely with second-hand clothes. This time, the amount was overwhelming, and the designs were even worse than before. "Oh, who would wear these?" I exclaimed in disbelief. I felt bad for my mother-in-law, but this was nothing short of an unwelcome favor. The clothes were just crowding my closet. I should give them away or sell them at a flea market. As I was thinking this, the phone rang. It was my mother-in-law again. "Oh, Jessica, did the clothes arrive?" I gathered some really special pieces this time. Her cheerfulness was almost overbearing. Even so, it would be problematic if she kept sending them regularly. "They're old and not really my style, mother-in-law. I appreciate the gesture, but I don't usually wear such flashy clothes." When I gently declined, her tone suddenly changed, and she became angry. "Excuse me, Jessica. What do you mean by criticizing the clothes I went out of my way to send you?" The correct response is thank you. "No, actually just wear them, Jessica. Sending you all those clothes will surely save you some money, won't it? The next time you come over, make sure you're wearing what I've given you, okay?" With that, my mother-in-law issued her one-sided command and abruptly hung up the phone. I sighed, realizing I'd made her angry. I had never known her to be so forceful with her opinions. That night, I decided to gather my courage and talk to my husband about it. "David, do you have a minute?" "Wait, you got more presents from my mom." "Well, that's what I wanted to talk about." David still thought I was receiving gifts I'd enjoy. When I explained the situation, his eyes widened in surprise. "Second-hand clothes?" "Yes, second-hand clothes, and they're not my style at all. I can't possibly wear them." I told him about my attempt to gently refuse over the phone and how it had upset her. "Can you talk to her, David?" David stayed silent for a while, sensing my distress over the unwanted clothes his mom had sent. I hoped he would come up with a solution to smooth things over between us. "I'll call Mom," David finally said, stepping out onto the balcony with his smartphone. I hoped he could resolve the situation, but when he returned, he said something outrageous. "Mom told me she was just trying to be nice by sending you clothes. You make it sound like it's a nuisance. You should be more grateful." I was baffled by David's words. "Hold on a minute. I told you right. I can't wear those clothes. They're not my style at all. Your mom said she used to wear them. Are you making fun of my mom's taste? That's not what I meant. Besides, some of the clothes even have holes in them. Are you saying I should wear those?" "Enough." Mom started crying when I told her you didn't like the clothes. "Please don't upset her anymore," David yelled. After yelling at me, David stormed off into his own room, slamming the door behind him. "Wait, what? Is it my fault?" I muttered, stunned. I never thought David would take his mom's side. Even if he didn't exactly support me, he could at least try to understand my feelings. I felt as if I had been betrayed by my husband. The following month, another package from my mother-in-law arrived. When I visited my in-laws' home and it was discovered that I wasn't wearing the clothes she had sent, she exploded. "I went to all this trouble to send them to you. Why aren't you wearing them?" she demanded. "Yeah, Mom went out of her way to send them to you," David joined in, siding with her against me. "No one really cares or notices what you're wearing. More importantly, it's absolutely the worst that you're wasting Mom's kindness like this," he added. It seemed David was completely on his mother's side. "Do you even understand how I feel being given tasteless old clothes, some even with holes, that are out of style?" I retorted. Everything felt absurd. All my efforts to maintain a good relationship with my mother-in-law and all my explanations to my husband seemed to be in vain, completely ignoring my feelings. David began treating me more like a housemaid than ever before. "What is this food? Are you skimping on it? You're lacking awareness as a wife. You're a full-time housewife, so you should do better. There are wrinkles in the laundry. My mother wouldn't make a mistake like this. Do it perfectly," he criticized. He was becoming incredibly picky. When I bought new clothes, he yelled, "Even though you wasted Mom's kindness, you're buying new clothes." I thought to myself, I don't know if I can continue this married life any longer. Then one day, David's company trip was confirmed. "Make sure you prepare for my company trip starting tomorrow," he instructed me. I, who have been feeling increasingly like a housemaid lately, naturally felt frustrated. However, upon reflection, this might be an opportunity for revenge. My mother-in-law continued to send me tasteless, worn-out clothes, ranging from men's to children's items, and even things I couldn't identify. Lately, she had even started sending me clothes so dirty, I questioned where she had found them. I retrieved the men's clothes from the pile and stuffed them into David's travel bag. This should do. David's company trip was scheduled for 2 nights and 3 days. During this time, I packed all the rags that had been sent from my mother-in-law into his suitcase. The next day, as soon as David departed for his trip, I began packing my belongings. Before leaving the house, I placed filled-out divorce papers on the table. Meanwhile, David, away on his company trip, found himself the subject of ridicule from his colleagues. "Hey, what's with these raggedy clothes, mate? Did you pick them up from a thrift store? Having a tiff with the missus, eh?" "Serves him right," his colleagues chuckled. That night, as expected, David called me. "Hey, what's the deal with the contents of the suitcase?" he demanded, his fury palpable even over the phone. I struggled to contain my laughter as I questioned David. "Is there an issue with your suitcase?" "What do you mean, an issue? Why are there these shabby clothes in here? Are you out of your mind, making your husband wear these? You think I'm crazy?" I replied calmly. "David, remember what you said, huh? Those clothes were sent as a gesture of goodwill by your mom. It'd be pretty odd for a son to waste such goodwill, don't you think?" Evidently, David hadn't realized the clothes I packed were from his mother. At my revelation, he stumbled over his words, caught off guard. "Hey, are you listening? Those clothes were sent by your mom. Since you were all for blaming me alongside her, you'll be wearing them without complaint, right?" I challenged. "Well, that's..." David was utterly flustered. I told him outright, "Do you understand now? Are you finally getting a feel for what I've been going through?" I left the divorce papers at home. "Divorce, I'll leave the rest to you." And with that, I hung up, leaving things unsaid. David bombarded me with calls and emails, all of which I ignored. Eventually, I returned to my parents' house. A few days later, my mother-in-law called me. "You listen here. You can't get divorced without my approval. If you don't listen, I'll hire a lawyer and sue you for emotional distress," she threatened. I responded calmly, "Feel free to do so." A week later, my mother-in-law instructed me to meet at a coffee shop for a meeting with a lawyer. I arrived at the specified location to find my mother-in-law, husband, and someone who appeared to be a lawyer waiting for me. "What's this? I've already decided on the divorce, so there's nothing to discuss now," I stated firmly. My mother-in-law's expression turned hostile as she snapped, "Don't mess around. After all we've done for you, we won't allow a selfish divorce." "Exactly," my husband chimed in, echoing my mother-in-law's sentiments. "I've become a laughingstock at work because of the clothes you made me wear. Now everyone at the office is laughing at me." "A laughingstock? Isn't that essentially mocking your own mother's tastes and clothing choices?" I couldn't help but laugh in front of them. My mother-in-law glared at me, her eyes widening in anger. "What's so amusing? You're such a cheeky wife," she snapped, then turned to the lawyer. "Hey, Mr. Lawyer, she can't possibly request a divorce from her position, can she?" I was informed that the wife was the one causing the trouble, the lawyer questioned, looking puzzled. I made it clear, "No, it's the other way around. I've been harassed by my mother-in-law and husband, receiving clothes like garbage every single month." Upon hearing this, the lawyer appeared perplexed. "This is completely different from what I was told." My mother-in-law seemed flustered by the revelation. Growing impatient with their reactions, my husband abruptly stood up. "That's it. I'm divorcing you, you useless wife. I'll demand full emotional distress compensation," he yelled at me. His outburst caught the attention of all the customers in the coffee shop. Seizing the moment, I asked, "So, does this mean I owe emotional distress compensation?" "Wait, who exactly are you talking to?" "Who, the person behind me?" he questioned, puzzled. I kindly clarified that to my puzzled mother-in-law. Just then, a figure from the back of the room emerged before us. David and my mother-in-law were taken aback, their mouths agape with surprise. "It's been a while, Mom." David, the person who appeared, was David's brother Sam. "What, Sam? Why are you here?" David asked. "Why am I here? Well, to defend Jessica, of course," Sam replied. "That's right, Sam. David's older brother is a renowned attorney specializing in divorce," I explained. "Wait a minute, Sam. Why? I asked you to defend me and you declined," my mother-in-law said, sounding perplexed. "Of course I declined," Sam's voice rang firm, "because it's clear to me that Jessica isn't at fault. And after hearing her side of the story, I discovered that you've been using the money I've been sending home every month under the guise of hard times to torment Jessica, haven't you?" That is, my mother-in-law seemed at a loss for words. Indeed, she had been receiving money from Sam every month. While some of it went towards living expenses, she had been using the excess to purchase supper clothes to send to me, all in an effort to torment me. Sam, in a short time, had researched these facts and collected evidence. "At you, David, the verbal abuse you hurled at Jessica earlier. It's all been recorded." Sam pulled out a voice recorder and played back the harsh words David had shouted earlier. Of course, this too will serve as substantial evidence in the divorce proceedings. "Hey, Sam, you're kidding, right? Why would you side with Jessica instead of your own family?" David asked. Sam responded firmly to David's question. "I'm a lawyer. No matter how you look at it, the fault lies with you too. Your lawyer also seems to see that there's no hope of winning. Maybe he should decline to represent you." At Sam's words, David's lawyer nodded in agreement and quietly left the cafe. "So, you two will be the ones paying the alimony, and Mom, I won't be sending any more money. Understand?" With those words, Sam exited the cafe and I followed him. Thank you, Sam, for helping me even though you're busy," I said, bowing my head. Sam responded with a warm smile. "No worries. I just can't stand injustice, Leonard," he replied. "I'm really grateful for your help this time. Thank you so much." I expressed my gratitude. And thanks to Sam, I was able to divorce peacefully. Of course, I received substantial alimony from my mother-in-law and David. Since the divorce, I haven't heard from my mother-in-law or David, and I've been enjoying the peaceful life. Although parting ways with Sam, who had been so supportive during the ordeal, left me feeling a bit melancholic, I knew I needed to move on swiftly and carve out my own path. I resolved to live my life to the fullest, one that David and my mother-in-law could only dream of envying. With that promise etched in my heart, I embarked on my new journey.
I was 7 when everything flipped upside down. That was the day Lily, my baby sister, came into the picture. My folks, they just couldn't get enough of her. "Look at that, she's got our nose, our eyes," they'd gush, acting like I was some stranger who accidentally wandered into the photo. I'll never forget the day they brought Lily home from the hospital. The whole house was buzzing like some big shot was coming to visit. And there I was, smack in the middle of it all, just trying to catch a glimpse of this sister everyone was fussing over. But no, the moment they walked in, it was like I turned invisible. "Nellie, sweetie, why don't you go play outside? Let us have some time with Lily," Mom said, with a kind of gentle shove towards the door. Dad was no better, all googly-eyed over Lily, acting like I wasn't there. As time marched on, it was clear who got the VIP treatment. Lily got the works, the newest toys, clothes that weren't picked out of a clearance bin, and even the better slices of cake. Me? I got the leftovers, the hand-me-downs, and the good-enoughs. School turned into a nightmare. "Hey, Scarecrow," they'd jeer, poking fun at my out-of-date, out-of-style getup. It stung, you know? I tried, really tried, to tell Mom and Dad how rough it was, hoping maybe, just maybe, they'd see me again. "I'm getting picked on at school. It's the clothes," I managed to spit out one evening. Mom barely glanced up, her hands busy prepping Lily's favorite meal. "Oh, Nellie, you're making mountains out of molehills. Lily's the baby, she needs the best we can give," she said, like that explained everything. Dad wasn't any help either. "You're the big sister, Nellie. You gotta be tough," he'd say, dismissing my feelings like they were nothing. That's how it was. Lily, with her shiny new things, and me, fading more into the background each day. I tried to brush it off, pretend it didn't bother me. But it did. Seeing Lily destroy her brand new toys while I clung to my second-hand ones, it just didn't sit right. Lily was the queen bee of our house, and she knew it too well. Her rule wasn't just about getting the best of everything, it was about making sure I knew my place, which was way below hers, obviously. One afternoon, I came home from school, my spirits a bit higher than usual. I'd actually had a decent day, no one called me names, and I'd aced a math test. But that was about to change. I walked into our room to find Lily with a marker in hand, my math notebook open and scribbled all over. Pages torn, equations smudged into oblivion. "Lily, what the heck are you doing?" I yelled, snatching the notebook from her grasp. She just looked up at me, her eyes wide with faux innocence. "I was just drawing. It looked boring," she retorted, her voice dripping with disdain. "Boring? That was my homework. How am I supposed to turn this in now?" I could feel the anger bubbling up, my brief moment of peace shattered. "Oh, boo-hoo. Just tell the teacher your dog ate it," she sneered, rolling her eyes and hopping off the bed, clearly not done wreaking havoc. Fuming, I gathered the ruined pages, trying to salvage what I could. It was then that Mom walked in, her eyes immediately drawn to the mess. "What happened here?" she asked, her tone already accusing me. "Lily destroyed my math homework with her art," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the injustice burning inside me. Mom turned to Lily, who by now had perfected her me look. "I didn't mean to. I was just playing," she said, the picture of innocence. And just like that, I knew I was the one who'd end up in trouble. "Nellie, can't you see she didn't do it on purpose? You're older, you should understand," Mom chided, her words a slap in the face. The days turned into a never-ending loop of Lily's cruelties. She'd ruin my stuff, play the victim, and I'd get the heat. Clothes, books, even my few cherished items from Grandma, nothing was safe. One day, I caught her red-handed, pouring paint over my school project. "Lily, that's my project. Why?" I shouted, grabbing the paint bottle from her. "It's funny. You should have seen your face," she laughed, her enjoyment of my misery clear as day. That was it. I'd had enough. "You're such a brat," I yelled, the words out before I could stop them. Her laughter stopped, and she stared at me, shocked that I'd finally retaliated. But then, as predictable as the sunrise, her eyes filled with tears, and she ran out of the room, wailing like I'd struck her. Mom was on us in seconds, her face a mix of concern for Lily and anger towards me. "What did you do to your sister?" she demanded, her hands on her hips. "She ruined my project, and I called her out on it," I protested, knowing it was futile. "Lily's just a child, Nellie. You're the adult here. Apologize to your sister," Mom ordered, her voice leaving no room for arguments. Apologize? For what? Standing up for myself? The unfairness of it all was suffocating. But I knew arguing would only make things worse. So I swallowed the lump in my throat, nodded, and went to find Lily. In the midst of all the chaos at home, I found my escape in books. Grandma had this old bookshelf in her living room, crammed with every story you could imagine. From the first time she showed it to me, I was hooked. It was like stepping into another world, one where I wasn't just the overlooked older sister. "Nellie, try this one," Grandma would say, handing me a thick novel with a worn-out cover. "It'll take you on a grand adventure." I'd sit there, curled up on her couch, diving headfirst into tales of distant lands and daring heroes. For a few hours, I could forget about Lily and the constant comparisons at home. One day, Grandma caught me reading instead of doing my homework. "Nellie, you know you've got responsibilities," she chided, but her eyes twinkled with understanding. "Yeah, I know. But these stories, Grandma, they make me feel different. Like I'm not just me." I tried to explain, struggling to put into words how much those books meant to me. Grandma sat down next to me, her arm wrapping around my shoulders. "Books are special, Nellie. They're friends who never let you down. But remember, the real world is out there too. You've got to find your place in it." Back at home, Lily noticed my growing obsession with reading. "Why do you always have your nose in a book? It's so boring," she'd scoff, her disdain for anything that didn't revolve around her clear as day. "It's better than dealing with you," I'd snap back, immediately regretting letting her get to me. "Whatever, nerd. Enjoy your stupid books," Lily would retort, flouncing off to report my rude behavior to Mom and Dad. Mom didn't get it either. "Nellie, why don't you spend more time with your sister instead of reading all day? You're setting a bad example." How was I setting a bad example? By trying to find some peace? It was like they were speaking a different language, one where logic and understanding were foreign concepts. "Because she doesn't get it, Mom. She doesn't get me. No one here does," I said once, my frustration boiling over. "All this reading's making you moody. Maybe you should take a break," Mom suggested, completely missing the point. A break? From the one thing that made me happy? No way. Those books were my lifeline, transporting me from a home where I felt invisible to places where anything was possible. I wasn't about to give that up. Evenings at Grandma's became my sanctuary. She never judged, never told me I was reading too much or wasting my time. Instead, she'd just smile and pass me another book. "You're a lot like me, Nellie. A dreamer. And that's a good thing." "Thanks, Grandma. It's just hard. At home, I admitted, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "I know, dear. But remember, the people in those stories you love? They face challenges, they struggle, but they never give up. You've got that same spirit in you." Those books and the time with Grandma, they were like a lifeline for me. But everything took a hit when I turned 17. Grandma passed away. It felt like losing my anchor in a stormy sea. My parents, though, they barely batted an eye. All they saw was an opportunity to dig through her stuff, like vultures circling for a meal. "I can't believe she had all this old junk. What are we even going to do with it?" Mom said, rifling through Grandma's things with a dismissive air. Dad was no better, eyes lighting up at the thought of what could be sold. "There's gotta be something valuable here. People pay good money for antiques," he mused, completely ignoring the sentimental value of Grandma's possessions. Then came the moment they found Grandma's library, my sanctuary. Those shelves held more than books, they held memories, lessons, and love. But to my parents, it was just another space taker. "We should just toss these out. Clear up some space," Dad said, ready to condemn my world to a trash bin. Panic surged through me at the thought. "No. Please, can I have them? If you don't want them, I'll take them," I blurted out, desperation making my voice louder than I intended. Mom and Dad exchanged looks, eyebrows raised as if the idea was ludicrous. "You want these old things? What for? You've got enough junk," Mom said, her voice laced with skepticism. "They're not junk. They were Grandma's, please," I begged, the thought of losing those books like losing a part of me. Dad snorted, a sound of disbelief and annoyance. "Fine, take them. It's less for us to deal with," he conceded, clearly uninterested in the emotional value the books held for me. Graduation day hit me with a mix of excitement and dread. I knew my folks didn't have the cash to send me off to college. I was gearing up to hit the job hunt hard, save up every penny for tuition. But then, out of the blue, Mom and Dad offered to foot the bill for my studies. "We'll pay for your college," Dad announced one evening, like it was no big deal. I was floored. Maybe they did care, deep down. Maybe they saw how hard I worked, how much I wanted this. Packing my bags, stuffing them with my worn-out clothes and those precious books from Grandma, I felt a flicker of hope. Off to college to become an accountant, I was determined to make them proud. Living on campus was a game-changer. I hit the books and the part-time job circuit with everything I had. My roommates threw around jokes, calling me Cinderella for how I juggled studying and working. "You're gonna miss your youth, buried in those books and work," they'd laugh. But I didn't mind, I had my eye on the prize. Then, the bomb dropped. Mom called one day, her voice all business. "It's great you found a job, but don't forget, you owe us half your paycheck every month." I nearly dropped the phone. "What? But I'm barely covering my expenses here." I thought the deal was just for tuition. That was the deal. Tuition in exchange for you paying us back. "You're working now, so start sending the money," she snapped, her tone ice cold. I tried to argue, to explain how tight things were already, but it was like talking to a brick wall. "We paid for your ticket out of here. You owe us, period," was her final word on the matter. So, I started sending them half my earnings. Every paycheck felt like a punch in the gut, a reminder that my hard work wasn't really mine. My roommates noticed the change, saw how every call home left me stressed and angry. "Cinderella's turned into a debtor, huh?" they'd say, trying to lighten the mood. But it wasn't funny. Not really. I felt trapped, like I was caught in a cycle I couldn't break free from. Studying, working, then handing over half of what I made. It was a brutal wake-up call. My parents' generosity was just another chain, another way to keep me tied to them, indebted and under control. Years rolled by, and I clawed my way up to become an accountant at a big company. The pay was nothing to brag about at first, but it was mine, and it fueled dreams of getting my own place, a tiny apartment where the only rules were the ones I made. Then came the family dinner, thrown in my honor for finishing college. That's where the dream got punched in the gut. Over plates of cold lasagna, Mom and Dad laid it on me thick. "You need to keep giving us half your salary," Dad said, not a hint of thanks in his voice. I choked on my food, stunned. "What? Still? I thought that was just for college." Mom's look could freeze lava. "You owe us, for your education. You think that was free?" Their words hit like a slap. There I was, dreaming of freedom, and they were tightening the chains. I had no choice but to stay put, handing over half my earnings, living in a room that felt more like a cell. With their hands out and jobs now just part-time, my folks settled into a comfy routine of TV binges, while I slaved away. Coming home meant stepping into a house where even a cooked meal was too much to ask for. Lily, oh, she turned the entitlement up to 11. Hey, I need money for a new phone. Mine's practically ancient, she'd say, her hand outstretched, a smirk playing on her lips. She knew I was strapped, but that didn't stop her. Dressing in second-hand clothes became the norm, my wardrobe a decade behind, earning whispers and side-eyes at work. I was the living, breathing definition of budget fashion, if you can call it fashion. Fast forward a few years, my salary finally hit $4,000. Sounds like a win, right? Wrong. Half went straight to my parents, and Lily, ever the leech, siphoned off another grand for her essentials. Makeup, clothes, you name it, she had to have it, and somehow, it was on my dime. I was stuck, a cash cow for a family that saw me more as a wallet than a daughter. Just need a bit more for a night out with the girls, Lily would chirp, as if I was made of money. You do realize I work for my money, right? It's not like I'm swimming in it. I'd snap back, tired of the constant drain. Mom would always jump to her defense. She's young, let her enjoy life. You're always so stingy. Stingy? With what, the pennies I was left with? Every day felt like a battle, coming home to demands and complaints, my own needs always last on the list. Turning 30 should have felt like a milestone, a reason to celebrate or at least acknowledge I've survived 3 decades. But as fate would have it, my big day slipped by unnoticed by those who were supposed to be my nearest and dearest, my parents and Lily. I walked into the house that evening, half expecting a surprise, maybe a small cake or a happy birthday tossed my way. Instead, I found nothing but the usual indifference. Hey, you guys remember what day it is? I ventured, hoping for a flicker of recognition. Mom looked up, puzzled, then shrugged. Thursday? No, it's my birthday, I said, a mix of disappointment and anger simmering within me. Oh, right. Well, happy birthday then. Why don't you order us some pizza to celebrate? Your treat, Dad said without missing a beat, already scrolling through his phone for the pizza place's number. Without a word, I turned and retreated to my room, locking the door behind me. The sound of their laughter and the casual way they dismissed me echoed in my mind. This was the final straw. It was clear as day now, nothing was going to change unless I made it happen. It was just another night, counting the cost of dreams deferred, when my phone buzzed. Aunt Maggie, Mom's sister, rarely called, so seeing her name light up the screen was a jolt. Hey, Aunt Maggie, I answered, trying to mask the exhaustion in my voice. Happy birthday, love. I was thinking about you. Did your folks do something nice for you? Her voice was warm, a contrast to the chill I felt at home. I laughed, hollow. Nice? You could say it's been just another day. There was a pause, heavy with unspoken words. Listen, dear, I've been meaning to tell you something. It's about your grandma's contribution to your college fund. I sat up straighter, confusion threading through my curiosity. What contribution? Mom and Dad paid for college. They remind me every chance they get. Aunt Maggie sighed, a sound laden with regret. No, love. It was your grandma. She set aside a fund for you, made your parents promise to use it for your education. They never spent a dime of their own money on your tuition. The room spun. They, what? But they've been taking my money, saying I owe them for college. It's the truth. I thought you knew. I'm so sorry, Nellie. I hung up, my mind racing. The betrayal stung, burning away the fog of years of manipulation. It wasn't just about the money, it was the principle, the years of control, of making me feel less than, all based on a lie. I walked out to confront them, Mom, Dad, and Lily, all there, celebrating as if they hadn't just forgotten my birthday, as if they hadn't been lying to me all my life. I know about the lie. I blurted out, my voice steady, despite the emotions raging inside. Grandma paid for my college, not you. Their laughter cut off abruptly, replaced by a stunned silence, before Mom tried to brush it off. What nonsense. Sit down, let's eat. You're overreacting as usual. Dad, with that smug look of his, chimed in. yeah, and don't forget to pay for this feast. It's your treat, remember? That's when I dropped the bomb. I'm done. I'm leaving. You've lied and used me for the last time. Their smirks faded. Dad's eyes widened, and Mom's face went pale. You can't be serious, she stammered. After everything we've done for you? I was firm. Exactly, because of everything you've done. I'm out. Lily snorted, her usual mocking self. Where will you go? You can barely afford to dress yourself. I ignored her jab. I'll figure it out. I'd rather struggle on my own than continue living like this. Dad finally set his phone down, his expression serious for once. You think you can just walk away from your responsibilities here? My only responsibility is to myself, I countered. I've done enough for this family, more than enough. It's time I start living for me. Mom's face hardened. If you walk out that door, don't think of coming back. Packing was a blur. I took what mattered most, Grandma's books, a few clothes. Everything else, all the trappings of a life filled with deceit, I left behind. I found a place, small but mine, a little apartment that felt more like home than any house I'd ever lived in. The shock of realizing I could actually afford to live on my own, without scrimping or saving every penny for them, was liberating. For the first time I could breathe, really breathe, without the weight of their expectations and manipulations crushing me. A month went by in a blissful, peaceful haze. Then the calls started. Mom, Dad, even Lily, all suddenly remembering my number, their voices dripping with false sweetness and desperate pleas. We need help, they'd say. We can't make ends meet without your help. I couldn't help but laugh. The audacity, after years of taking and taking, to ask for more. This time I was ready. I blocked their numbers, cutting off the last tie to a past I no longer wanted any part of. Life in my new apartment was like breathing fresh air after being underwater for too long. I filled it with plants, cozy cushions, and, of course, Grandma's books took pride of place on the shelves. My first morning there, I remember making coffee and just sitting on the floor, surrounded by boxes, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. It wasn't long before I had to dive into work, and that's where I really started to see the changes in me. I wasn't just more confident, I felt empowered, like I could tackle any challenge thrown my way. My colleagues noticed too. Nellie, you've been on fire lately, Jenna, a close colleague, commented as we grabbed lunch one day. I smiled, stirring my coffee. Feels like I've finally woken up, you know? Yeah, I do. It's awesome to see. You're, like, a whole new person. That whole new person vibe wasn't just in my professional life. For the first time, I started to invest in myself too. I picked up hobbies that I'd always wanted to try but never had the time or energy for, thanks to my previous family obligations. I started painting, something I hadn't done since I was a kid, and joined a local hiking group. Life felt full, vibrant, and entirely mine. Aunt Maggie became my rock during this time. Her support was unwavering, and she was always just a call away, ready to listen or offer advice. One evening, she invited me over for dinner, something that had become a monthly tradition for us. As we sat down to eat, she broached a subject I hadn't expected. Nellie, I've been thinking. You've done so well for yourself, really turned your life around. How would you feel about inheriting my house? I wanted to go to someone who loves it as much as I do, and I can't think of anyone better than you. I almost choked on my water. Aunt Maggie, that's incredibly generous, but I can't accept that. Why not? She asked, her eyes twinkling. Think of it as a family legacy, passing from one generation to the next. You deserve it, Nellie. We went back and forth, but Aunt Maggie was insistent. By the end of the night, I was overwhelmed by her generosity and what it meant for my future. It was a testament to how far I'd come, from being the family's forgotten provider to being recognized and valued for who I was. Reflecting on my journey, I realized that breaking free from my family's toxic dynamics was the best decision I'd ever made. It wasn't just about gaining financial independence or escaping their constant demands. It was about finding myself, discovering my worth outside of their valuation. Life now was a testament to the power of change, of making hard choices for the sake of one's own happiness and well-being. I had learned that sometimes, the family you create is just as important as the one you're born into. And sometimes, to find your true place in the world, you have to be willing to leave behind everything you thought you knew. The party was already in full swing when I got there, music blasting and people everywhere, laughing and dancing. My friend Sarah's place was known for these blowouts, but tonight felt different. Maybe because I wasn't really in the mood for partying, considering the rough week at the dental clinic, dealing with patients who thought flossing was a suggestion rather than a necessity. I was nursing my drink, kinda zoning out, when he walked over. "Seems like you're not enjoying the party much," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. I looked up, a bit taken aback. He was older, probably in his early 40s, with that kind of distinguished look that some men seem to grow into. "Just tired," I admitted, forcing a smile. "Rough week at work." He laughed, a hearty sound that made a few heads turn. "Tell me about it. I'm Mark, by the way." "Laura," I said, shaking his hand. It was warm, his grip firm. "So, Laura, what brings you to this madhouse?" he asked, glancing around at the party chaos. "Sarah's a friend from college. And you?" I was curious. He didn't seem like the usual crowd here. "Ah, I've known Sarah's uncle for years. Promised I'd show my face," he explained. We found ourselves a quieter corner and started talking. Turned out, Mark was into finance, something with stocks, which usually would bore me to tears, but the way he talked about it was kind of fascinating. And funny, too. He had this way of making even the driest topics seem interesting. At some point, he mentioned his upcoming birthday, almost as an afterthought. "It's actually this coming Thursday. Another year closer to oblivion," he joked, a mock toast with his drink. "Happy early birthday, then. I'll have to get you a present," I said, playing along with the jest. He raised an eyebrow, a smile playing on his lips. "Oh, really? Well, I wouldn't say no to that. How about you join me for dinner? Consider it my birthday present." I laughed, thinking he was continuing the joke. "Sure, why not? Beats spending your birthday alone, right?" To my surprise, he took out his phone. "Great. Let me get your number, and I'll send you the details." That's how I ended up agreeing to a dinner for Mark's birthday, barely an hour after meeting him. It was impulsive, sure, but there was something about him, something that made me want to say yes. The night of the dinner came quicker than I thought. It was at this cozy little restaurant downtown, just the right kind of place for a birthday dinner. Mark was already there, waiting with a smile that made my heart do a weird flip. "Happy birthday," I said, handing him a small, wrapped gift. It was just a book I thought he'd like, nothing fancy. He looked genuinely touched, opening it with a care that made me feel, I don't know, special, I guess. "This is perfect, Laura. Thank you." Dinner was amazing. We talked about everything and nothing, from our jobs to the crazy ways of the world. And the more we talked, the more I realized I was enjoying myself, enjoying his company. It was late when we finally left the restaurant. "Thanks for a great birthday, Laura. It's been a long time since I've enjoyed one like this," Mark said, his voice sincere. I felt a warmth spread through me at his words. I'm glad I could make it special. Happy birthday, Mark. Who knew a simple birthday dinner could kick off a whirlwind like the one Mark and I found ourselves in? Not me, that's for sure. After that night, we started seeing each other more and more. It wasn't long before those casual dates turned into something that felt a lot like, well, like something serious. One chilly evening, we were walking down the street after grabbing a bite at this little dive that Mark loved. He was going on about something funny that happened at his office, his laughter echoing in the cool air. Suddenly, Mark stopped walking and turned to me, his expression serious all of a sudden. "Laura, I'd been thinking. Yeah? I prompted, a bit taken aback by the sudden shift in mood. I'm really happy with you. Like, really happy. And I was wondering. What do you think about us moving in together? He blurted out, his gaze fixed on me. I felt my heart skip a beat. Moving in together? That was a big step. Mark, I'm happy too, really happy. But don't you think it's a bit soon? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He took my hands in his eyes earnest. Maybe it is, but when something feels this right, why wait? I love you, Laura. And I want us to start building something together. His words sent a wave of warmth through me. Love. He'd said he loved me. And the crazy part? I realized I loved him too. Okay. I said, the word coming out in a whisper. Let's do it. Let's move in together. The smile that lit up Mark's face was worth any doubt or fear I might have had. From that night on, things moved quickly. We found a cozy apartment not too far from where I worked. Packing up my stuff and moving in with Mark felt like the start of a new chapter. It wasn't all smooth sailing, of course. Combining two lives into one space came with its fair share of bumps. Like the time I discovered Mark's insistence on keeping his ancient, ugly recliner right in the middle of our living room. I replied that in return I would put my neon pink flamingo lamp in the room. It was these little moments, these little compromises, that made us stronger, I think. We were figuring it out together, learning to give and take. Then came the talk of marriage. We were lying in bed one night, just talking about everything and nothing, when Mark suddenly turned to me. Laura, marry me. It wasn't a question, more like a statement. No kneeling, no ring in hand, just him and me, and his words hanging in the air between us. I looked into his eyes, saw the love and the seriousness there, and knew my answer. Yes, Mark. I'll marry you. The wedding was a small affair, just as we wanted. My parents, a few close friends, and of course, Alex, Mark's son. I could tell the kid wasn't thrilled about the situation, but he didn't kick up a fuss. Probably didn't want to upset his dad. Life with Mark was mostly smooth sailing, at least until the day he came to me with a request that threw me for a loop. Hey, Laura, can we talk about something? Mark asked one evening, looking a bit uneasy, which was unusual for him. Sure, what's up? I replied, setting down my book. His tone had already put me on alert. It's about Alex, he began, pacing a little. He's got this dream of starting a music band, and he's pretty serious about it. I nodded, encouraging him to continue. Music was a great outlet for teens, after all. Well, he's short on cash for some equipment and stuff. I was wondering, could we help him out? He needs about $10,000. Mark finished, finally stopping to look at me. I almost choked on my tea. $10,000? That's a lot of money, Mark. I know, but it's for a good cause, right? It's his dream. Mark pressed, his eyes searching mine for some sign of agreement. I sighed, feeling a mix of emotions. On one hand, I wanted to support Mark and his son, but on the other, this was a huge amount of money. Let me think about it, okay? In the end, I agreed. Seeing Mark so hopeful and excited about helping his son was touching. But that was just the beginning. A few months later, Mark came to me again. This time, he seemed more anxious. Laura, I hate to ask, but Alex needs more money for the band. Another $10,000, he said quickly, as if trying to get the words out before he could change his mind. I felt my frustration rise. Again, Mark? We just gave him $10,000. Where is all that money going? Mark's face fell, and he became defensive. He's investing in his future, Laura. Don't you think it's worth it? I do, but it's a lot of money. We're not made of cash, you know, I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. The argument that followed was heated. Mark accused me of not caring about Alex's future, and I accused him of not being realistic. It ended with Mark storming out, leaving me alone and bewildered. He returned a few days later, apologetic but still insistent. "I'm sorry for blowing up, Laura. But it's important. To me, to Alex. Please." Torn between my love for Mark and my concerns about this seemingly bottomless pit of financial support for Alex's band, I agreed once more. But it didn't sit right with me. Then came the bombshell. Mark, looking more haggard and desperate than I'd ever seen him, asked for $30,000. "Mark, this is crazy. $30,000? What's going on? This isn't just about some band," I said, feeling my patience wearing thin. It's for a tour. They've got a real shot, Laura," he stammered, avoiding my gaze. "A tour? Mark, you can't expect me to believe this. We need to see some proof, something to show for all this money," I demanded, my voice rising. Mark exploded. "Why can't you just trust me, Laura? Why do you always have to make things so difficult?" The fight that ensued was ugly, full of accusations and hurtful words. Mark threatened divorce if I didn't agree to give Alex the money. I was stunned. This wasn't the man I married. I asked for time to think, but what I really needed was answers. This situation felt wrong on so many levels, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. First stop on my detective trail was the internet. I figured if Alex's band was legit, they'd have some kind of online presence. So, I hunkered down with my laptop, typed in the band's name Mark mentioned, and hit search. The results were as barren as a desert, nothing, zip, zilch. Not a single trace of a band that was supposedly on the brink of their big break. Feeling a mix of frustration and vindication, I headed over to Alex's Instagram. If there were any clues to be found, it had to be there. I scrolled through his feed, which was like flipping through a catalog of luxury. Fancy dinners, designer gear, you name it. But among the high life snapshots, not a single pic hinted at a music career. No instruments, no rehearsal spaces, nothing. Baffled, I decided it was time for some expert advice. I dialed up Danny, a buddy from college who's now deep into the music scene, always on the pulse of the latest bands and trends. "Hey Danny, it's me," I started, trying to sound casual. "Quick question for you, ever heard of a band called?" I gave him the name Mark had fed me. There was a moment of silence on the line, then Danny's confused voice came through. "Never heard of them. And trust me, if they were making any waves, I'd know. Why? They any good?" I let out a sigh, a mix of disappointment and relief. "Nah, just came across the name. Thought I'd check. Thanks, man." Danny's curiosity was piqued. "You sure? I can do a bit more digging if you want." "No, it's okay. Really. I appreciate it, though," I said, before quickly changing the subject. We chatted for a few more minutes about nothing in particular, before hanging up. There I was, back at square one, but now armed with a bucket load of doubts, and no one to share them with. I didn't breathe a word of this to Mark. How could I? I didn't know whether he was in on this scam or just another pawn in Alex's game. Nah, this needed more digging, and until I had something solid, my lips were sealed. The moment had come to face the music, or, more accurately, the lack thereof. I perched in front of my computer, the green light of the webcam flickering to life. My finger hovered over the Skype icon before pressing it with determination. This wasn't just a call, it was a confrontation. Alex answered, his face filling the screen. He looked relaxed, maybe too relaxed, like he was about to schmooze more money out of me. He didn't know the storm that was coming. "Hey, Laura. What's up?" he started, all smiles. "Cut the crap, Alex. We're not playing this game anymore. There's no band, is there? No music, no gigs, just you, living it up on my dime." I shot back, not giving him an inch. He tried to keep his smile, but I saw it falter. "What are you talking about?" "Of course, there's a..." "Save it. I've done my homework. Your Instagram's a nice little portfolio of lies." "Yeah, your band is as real as a $3 bill. I cut him off, my voice sharp as a knife. For a moment, Alex looked like he was searching for another lie, another angle. But then, his expression shifted, darkened. "You're gonna regret poking your nose into this, Laura. I've got friends, the kind that make problems go away." The threat hung in the air, a shadow passing over his face. My heart skipped, fear mingling with anger. But I wasn't about to back down. "Threats, Alex? Really? Here's something you should know, this call is being recorded. Every word. Think your friends can handle police heat?" Watching his bravado crumble was almost satisfying. His face went from confident to pale, his eyes wide. "No, no, no. You can't." I was just, "Please, Laura. I made it up, okay? There's no gang, no friends. It's just me." The tears started, his tough act melting away to reveal a scared kid in over his head. But I was past sympathy. All this, for what, Alex? Why the lies? Why the money? He was sobbing now, a mess of regret and fear. I just wanted to be someone, you know? Someone important. The money, the lifestyle. I thought it would make me happy. And you lied to your father? That part of your happiness plan? I pushed, needing him to understand the weight of his actions. He flinched, wiping his eyes. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I found out about him and someone else. Photos. I thought I could use it to. I don't know, get more money, keep up the act. I felt cold, a chill that went bone deep. "You have proof? Send it. Now." He didn't argue, quickly tapping away on his end. Moments later, my phone dinged with the incoming evidence. Photos of Mark in the arms of another woman, unmistakable in their betrayal. My heart broke, not just for the marriage I thought I had, but for the man I thought Mark was. Armed with the ugly truth and a heavy heart, I waited for Mark to come home. The air was thick with anticipation, almost suffocating. I rehearsed what I was going to say 1,000,000 times over, but when I heard his key in the door, all my plans flew right out the window. He walked in, tired, the lines on his face more pronounced than ever. "Hey, Laura. We need to," he started, but I cut him off. "We need to talk. Now," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. Mark paused, looking at me, really looking, and he must have seen something in my eyes because he nodded, setting his bag down with a heaviness that matched my heart. "Okay, what's wrong?" I took a deep breath, the photos I'd received from Alex burning a hole in my pocket. "It's about Alex, and you." "I know everything, Mark." His face paled, the blood draining away as if I'd struck him. "What do you mean? Laura, Don't you dare lie to me, not now. I've seen the photos, Mark. The ones Alex has been blackmailing you with. Of you and her." I spat out, the words tasting like bile. For a moment, he just stood there, a statue, then he slumped into a chair, his face in his hands. "Laura, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry, I never wanted you to find out this way." "Sorry? Is that supposed to make everything alright? You cheated on me, Mark. And then you let your son blackmail you into bleeding us dry." My voice was rising, a crescendo of betrayal and hurt. I know. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. I was going to end it, I swear. And Alex. I didn't know how to handle it. I was scared of losing everything. He mumbled, his voice muffled by his hands. "Losing everything? You've already lost it, Mark. You lost me the moment you decided to step out on our marriage. And for what? A fling? To feel young again?" I was pacing now, the anger, the hurt, it was all bubbling up. I want a divorce. After the dust settled from our confrontation, the reality of my next steps began to sink in. Mark had retreated to a hotel, leaving me alone in the apartment we once shared, surrounded by memories that now felt like ghosts. I started packing, each item a reminder of the life I thought we were building together. It was surreal, sorting through our belongings, deciding what was mine and what we had shared. The packing didn't take as long as I thought. My life, it seemed, could be condensed into a few suitcases and boxes. A stark reminder of how quickly things can change, how swiftly the familiar can become past. Once everything was packed, I stood in the middle of the now bare living room, a pang of sadness hitting me. This was it. The end of a chapter. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the next step, and called a taxi. Arriving at the rented place felt like stepping into another world. It was smaller, less personal, but it was a clean slate, a place without the shadows of betrayal. After paying the taxi driver, I hauled my things up to the apartment, the physical exertion a welcome distraction from the turmoil inside. Once inside, surrounded by boxes and suitcases, I finally allowed myself a moment to breathe. The quiet of the apartment was a stark contrast to the storm of emotions I'd been living through. It was in this new silence that I realized the gravity of what had happened, of what I'd done. I'd left my husband, my home, and stepped into the unknown. Needing to hear a friendly voice, I picked up my phone and dialed Sarah, the friend whose birthday party had changed my life all those years ago. She answered on the second ring, her voice a balm to my frayed nerves. "Hey, it's me," I started, my voice steadier than I felt. "Hey, what's up? You sound off," she replied, her tone immediately shifting to concern. I took a deep breath, the words tumbling out. "I left Mark. I found out about everything. The affair, the lies, Alex's blackmail. I couldn't stay there, in that apartment, with all those memories." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Oh my God, Laura, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm in a rented apartment. Just needed to get away, to start figuring things out on my own," I explained, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "Laura, I'm here for you, whatever you need. I can't believe he would do that to you," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thanks, Sarah. It means a lot. I just need some time, to process all of this." Hanging up, I felt a small sense of comfort, a reminder that despite everything, I wasn't completely alone. The first few weeks after leaving Mark were a blur of emotions and paperwork. The divorce proceedings were underway, a seemingly endless stream of signatures and legalities that felt both freeing and suffocating. The end of my marriage had sent ripples through my life, changing not just my future but Mark's as well. He's been having a rough time. The story got out, about the affair and the blackmail. It's affected his job, his reputation. It was a sobering thought, one that made me realize the depth of the fallout from our shattered relationship. In the days that followed, I threw myself into work and started exploring new hobbies, anything to rebuild the pieces of myself that had been lost in the turmoil. Slowly, I began to find joy in the little things, a coffee at a new cafe, a book that made me think, a jog in the park that cleared my mind. One afternoon, I decided to visit an art class, something I'd always wanted to try but never had the courage to do. There, covered in paint and laughing at my own lack of skill, I felt a spark of something new. It wasn't just about moving on from Mark, it was about rediscovering who I was without him. Just when I thought I was finding my new normal, my phone rang with a number I hadn't expected to see again, Alex's. "Hey." His voice came through, tentative, a stark contrast to the bravado and deceit that had marked our last exchanges. I hesitated, the old hurt flaring up for a moment, before I pushed it down. "Alex, what's up?" I just wanted to say I'm sorry, for everything. I messed up, big time. I realized I was chasing all the wrong things, for all the wrong reasons," he said, the words rushed, like he'd been rehearsing them. I listened, the silence on my end prompting him to continue. "It's just, I never really got much attention from Dad, And money, we never had enough. I thought if I could just live that life, even for a little while, it'd make things better. But I was wrong," he admitted, his voice laced with something that sounded a lot like regret. "Alex, I forgive you. But you need to understand, going down that path, using people, lying, it's only going to bring you more trouble," I said, my tone more gentle than I would have expected of myself. There was a pause, and then a quiet, "I know. I'm going to change, I promise. No more lies, no more schemes. I'm done with that life." His words held a note of sincerity that I hadn't heard from him before. It was enough to make me believe that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to turn a new leaf. "Good. Stick to that promise, Alex. It's never too late to start making the right choices," I encouraged, a part of me hoping he'd take my words to heart. We ended the call soon after, and I found myself staring at the phone long after the line had gone dead. Alex's apology and the promise of change were unexpected but welcome. It was a small step towards closing a painful chapter for both of us. In the days that followed, I threw myself even more into my work, my art, and my friendships. Each brushstroke on the canvas, each laugh shared with friends, felt like a declaration of my resilience, a testament to my ability to move forward. My name's Chloe. I'm 29, a lawyer, not the kind you see on TV, but the real deal. Work's my life, or at least it was until that messed up morning my car decided to die on me. Standing there, on the edge of the road, watching the tow truck haul my car away, I was fuming. Late for work, with no ride, and my phone dying. Just great. Then this guy, Mike, stops by. First thing he says, "Looks like you could use a hand." He's casual, driving this old pickup that's seen better days, but there's something about him. I'm thinking, do I really want to get into a stranger's truck? But then, what choice did I have? "Only if you're heading towards downtown," I said, trying not to sound as desperate as I felt. "Downtown it is. Hop in." He shot back with a grin that could disarm you at 20 paces. His confidence was something else. The ride was something out of a movie. We talked, or more like, he did most of the talking. Told me about his job in construction, how he loves it but hates waking up early. I shared bits about my lawyering, careful not to dive too deep into the boring details. "You always pick up strangers?" I asked, half joking. "Only the ones who look like they won't murder me in my sleep." He laughed. That got me. His humor, it was dry, kind of like mine. We exchanged numbers before he dropped me off. "In case your car decides to bail on you again," he said. I rolled my eyes, but smiled. Didn't think much of it then. Work was a blur, but I couldn't shake off the morning's adventure. Mike's number burned a hole in my phone. On a whim, I texted him, "My car's a traitor, but you're not. Coffee?" He replied almost instantly, "Thought you'd never ask." Mike and we clicked. Not just on the surface, but deep down. He got my jokes, didn't mind my rants about work, and somehow, seeing him became the best part of my day. Weird how life works. One day you're cursing the heavens for a broken down car, and the next, you're waiting for a text from the guy who offered you a ride. That ride changed everything. Looking back, it's funny how moments like these, totally random, unplanned, can set the course of your whole life. But back then, I was just enjoying the ride, pun intended. Meeting Mike was a breath of fresh air, a reminder that sometimes, the best things come from the most unexpected places. And as for my car, well, it got fixed, but I found myself hoping for more mornings like that one, stranded or not. And sure enough, he called later that week, asking me out. We met up at this no-frills cafe, nothing fancy, just a cozy spot where we could talk. And talk we did. It was easy, like we'd known each other for ages. He made me laugh, listened to my rants, and somehow, time just flew by. After Mike and I got serious, he started talking about meeting his family. I was nervous, sure, but figured it was just another step in our thing. Mike had told me loads about his mom and sister, how they were this tight little clan since forever. I respected that. But nothing could have prepped me for the actual meet. We pulled up to their house, a cozy-looking place with a wild garden out front. Mike had this brace yourself look as we walked up. "Remember, they're a bit intense," he warned, ringing the bell. "Intense?" I echoed, raising an eyebrow. "I'm a lawyer, Mike. Ideal with intense for breakfast. The door swung open, and there stood his mom, Carol, and sister, Lucy. First impressions? Carol had the scrutinizing gaze that could peel paint, and Lucy seemed to mirror her, minus a few years. "Mike. And you must be Chloe," Carol said, her voice sweet but her eyes doing a full audit. Come in, come in." The living room was like stepping into a different era, all antique furniture and photos. Mike introduced me properly, and we sat down, the air thick with anticipation. "So, Chloe," Carol started, all casual. "Mike tells us you're a lawyer. That must be interesting." "Yeah, it's got its moments," I replied, trying to keep it light. Lucy chimed in. "Must rake in a pretty penny, huh?" I laughed, a bit taken aback. "Well, it pays the bills, and then some." Mike shot me a look, a mix of apology and "I told you so." The conversation steered into downright nosy territory real quick. Carol leaned in. "But exactly how much are we talking?" "You know, just out of curiosity." "Ah, trade secret," I quipped, hoping my smile hid my discomfort. Mike tried to change the subject, bless him, but the two were like bloodhounds on a scent. After dinner, which was an interrogation disguised as a meal, I heard them in the living room, speculating about my salary based on the brands I wore and the car I drove. Mike found me in the kitchen, refilling my glass. "Hey, they're just protective. Don't mind them." "Protective?" I muttered, swirling my drink. "Feels more like an inquisition." We tried to make the best of the rest of the evening, but it was clear there was a gap between us and them. As we left, Carol's too sweet goodbye and Lucy's smug wave felt like a challenge. On the drive back, Mike kept apologizing. "They can be a bit much." "I'm sorry, Chloe." "It's fine," I said, though it wasn't, really. Just wasn't expecting the Spanish Inquisition. Mike laughed, that easy sound I'd fallen for. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. It was our first real test, meeting his family. I thought back to my own, no-nonsense folks who valued privacy and respect. Mike's family was another world, one where boundaries seemed optional and every detail of your life was up for debate. But I liked Mike a lot. Enough to weather a bit of family drama. Still, as we headed home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Little did I know how right I was. Marrying Mike was like a whirlwind. Everything happened so fast, from the proposal to planning the wedding. I thought maybe, just maybe, tying the knot would smooth things over with his mom, Carol, and his sister, Lucy. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. Our wedding day was a blur of flowers, vows, and a small sea of faces. Despite the rush, I caught Carol and Lucy throwing looks that could curdle milk. I brushed it off, focusing on Mike and the new chapter we were starting. At the reception, Carol cornered me. "Chloe, dear, this is quite the event. You must have spent a fortune." I forced a smile. "It's a special day. We wanted it to be memorable." Lucy piped up from behind her mom. "Yeah, memorable and expensive. Hope Mike knows what he signed up for." I bit back a sharper retort. "We're both happy. That's what matters." The tension didn't end with the wedding. If anything, it ramped up. Carol and Lucy started dropping by our place unannounced, each visit an exercise in patience. They critiqued everything from my cooking to how I decorated our apartment. One evening, they outdid themselves. Carol, gloved hand and all, dragged her finger across the top of our bookshelf and sked at the dust she found. "Really, Chloe, cleanliness is next to godliness," she said, smirking. Lucy was quick to join in. "Yeah, and I guess we're living among mortals here." I clenched my jaw, counting to 10 in my head. Well, I didn't realize we were hosting royalty. My mistake. Mike, ever the peacemaker, tried to laugh it off. "Come on, you three. Let's not start World War III over a little dust." But the visits grew more frequent and their comments more cutting. I started dreading the sound of the doorbell. Each time they left, I felt more like an intruder in my own home. I finally broke down and told Mike how I was feeling. Your mom and sister, they're making my life hell. It's like they're marking their territory, and I'm the outsider. Mike looked torn. I know it's tough, but they're family. They just need time to adjust. I'll talk to them, okay? But talking seemed to translate to nodding along while they ranted about me not being good enough. Things reached a boiling point one day when they came over, criticizing the dinner I'd made. This is interesting, Carol said, poking at her food. Lucy snorted. Interesting is one word for it. Fed up, I snapped. You know, not everyone can be a Michelin star chef. If you don't like it, maybe next time you can cook. That shut them up for all of 5 seconds. Mike's attempt to smooth things over didn't help much. Chloe's right. Let's appreciate the effort, okay? The effort felt futile, though. No matter what I did, it was never enough. They wanted me to change, to mold into whatever perfect daughter-in-law image they had in their heads. But that wasn't me. I'd hit my limit with Carol and Lucy's endless nagging and snide remarks. Their arrogance was something else, like they were the queens of some small kingdom and I was the unwelcome commoner. I'd told Mike about how they were grinding me down, hoping he'd step in. His response? I'll talk to them, he said, his voice so wishy-washy it made me see red. It was clear as day he didn't want to rock the boat, preferring to stand on the sidelines of this mess. That was the last straw for me. I wasn't about to play the silent sufferer in my own home. If Mike wasn't going to stand up to them, I sure as hell would. The next time they decided to grace us with their presence, I had a plan. We were all sitting around the dinner table, the air already thick with tension. I saw my moment and took it. Mike's got something he wants to say, I declared, throwing him a look that I hoped would light a fire under him. Mike went red, fumbling for words. Yeah. Mom, Lucy, you should really show Chloe some respect, he mumbled, barely meeting anyone's eyes. You could have heard a pin drop. Carol's face went from 0 to furious in a heartbeat. Respect? She spat, her anger not aimed at Mike, but squarely at me. I will not let you cause a rift between my son and me. The room felt like it was spinning. Here we were, the whole sorry mess out in the open. Mike was squirming, looking anywhere but at us. Carol was in full battle mode, and Lucy? She just sat there, smirking like she was watching her favorite show. I'm not trying to start anything. I shot back, my voice steady even if my insides were anything but. I'm just saying, this is my home too. I deserve to be treated with some kind of decency. Carol snorted, a sound full of disdain. Decency? This isn't about decency. It's about you trying to wedge yourself between me and my children. The accusation was ludicrous. All I'd ever wanted was to find some common ground, to be part of their family, not tear it apart. But standing there, facing Carol's wrath and Mike's silence, I felt a cold realization settle in. Maybe this was a battle I couldn't win. As the evening spiraled into a blur of heated words and cold silences, I wondered how we'd ever recover. Mike's half-hearted attempt at support had only thrown gasoline on the fire, and now I was the villain in Carol's story, the woman who dared to stand up for herself. The confrontation had been meant to clear the air, to finally draw some boundaries. Instead, it felt like I'd only succeeded in drawing battle lines, with me on one side and the family I'd hoped to join on the other. And Mike? He was still somewhere in the middle, unwilling or unable to choose a side. After that fight, my life turned upside down. Carol, my mother-in-law, made it her mission to make my existence a living hell. She'd pop over when I was dead on my feet from work, starting drama out of thin air. And when Mike got home, there she was, all tears and sob stories, claiming I was the villain, hurling insults her way. Mike, bless him, fell for it every time. We'd end up in arguments, him siding with Carol, leaving me feeling like I was taking crazy pills. It was like I was the outsider in my own marriage, speaking a language no one else understood. But it didn't stop there. A friend of mine let slip that Lucy was out there, telling anyone who'd listen that I was dirty in my work, hinting I was pocketing client money without paying taxes. That was the last straw. I'm no saint, but I don't mess around with my profession. I called Lucy, my words sharp as knives. You know, spreading lies about someone's work is called slander. And that can get you sued. Lucy's bravado crumbled real quick over the phone. I'll stop. I didn't mean anything by it, she stammered, the fear in her voice clear as day. But the damage was done. She went crying to Mike, playing the victim, and before I knew it, I was getting an earful. Why are you bullying Lucy? Can't you see she's scared of you? Mike's anger was a red flag, signaling deeper issues in our marriage. Every day, I felt more like an outsider, a stranger in a world where Carol and Lucy reigned supreme, and Mike was their loyal subject. The more I saw it, the more I realized, I was the odd one out, always going to be second to his mother and sister. The battles at home were one thing, but Lucy trying to tarnish my professional reputation? That was a low blow, even for them. I started to wonder if Mike would ever really have my back, or if I was doomed to be the villain in their twisted family drama. The phone call from Carol had been as pleasant as nails on a chalkboard. Lucy's tying the knot. We're celebrating at Le Grande Plateau this Friday. You're coming, she stated, her voice broking no argument. My heart sank. The last thing I wanted was to spend an evening in the lion's den, but Mike was all about mending fences. It could be good for us, a fresh start, he argued with that eternal optimism of his. Reluctantly, I agreed. Le Grande Plateau was the kind of place where the prices on the menu made you do a double take, wondering if you'd accidentally wandered into a car dealership instead. Carol, Lucy, the groom-to-be, and his parents were already seated, attacking a seafood platter like it was their last meal. No sooner had we taken our seats than Carol dropped the bomb. Chloe, darling, we thought it'd be lovely if you covered tonight's feast. A small gesture to cement your place in our family, she announced, loud enough for neighboring tables to overhear. I nearly spat out my drink. You're joking, right? You expect me to foot the bill for this extravaganza? The table fell eerily silent, all eyes on me. Lucy, never one to miss a beat, added, "Oh, come on, don't be such a tightwad, Chloe. It's not every day your sister-in-law gets engaged." I felt like I was in the twilight zone. Look, I came here to show support, not to bankroll Lucy's engagement party. This is beyond ridiculous. Carol's expression hardened. I specifically chose this venue with the expectation you'd contribute. It's about showing respect, Chloe. My gaze flickered to Mike, desperate for him to say something, anything, in my defense. His response floored me. She's right, Chloe. Just pay. We don't need more drama. You'll pay, otherwise we'll get divorced. I was flabbergasted. So, it's pay up or get out? Is that my choice? Are you seriously siding with them on this? Carol's smirk told me everything I needed to know. She thought she had won. But something inside me refused to let that happen. You want a divorce over this? Fine. Let's do it. I'm not your puppet. You could have heard a pin drop. The shock on their faces was a bittersweet victory. I stood, my chair scraping loudly against the tile. I've had enough. Enough of the manipulation, the insults, and this sham of a marriage. As I stormed out, their bitter words followed me, but they bounced off me like I was made of steel. I was done. Done playing the villain in their messed up family drama. Driving away, a torrent of emotions overwhelmed me. Fear, relief, anger, but above all, a sense of liberation. I'd finally stood up for myself, drawn a line in the sand. After the restaurant showdown, I went back to what used to be our place, now just a space filled with memories I couldn't wait to leave behind. Packing was a blur, each item a reminder of a life that felt like someone else's story. Once everything was boxed up, I filed for divorce. No dramatic confrontations, just a quiet end to a chapter one was ready to close for good. Word got around quickly, not just about the divorce, but about the fallout from that disastrous dinner. Turns out, Carol had tried to pull the same stunt with the groom's parents, insisting they cover the extravagant bill. That backfired spectacularly. The groom, fed up with the family's antics, called off the engagement with Lucy. You'd think that'd give them a moment's pause, a second of self-reflection, but no. Instead, Carol and Lucy pinned the blame squarely on me. According to the rumor mill, I was the villain of the piece, a greedy, heartless woman who'd torn their family apart. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so pathetic. The aftermath of that explosive dinner wasn't pretty. Word got around fast, too fast. My phone was buzzing non-stop, texts and calls pouring in from friends and, unfortunately, acquaintances who'd heard some version of the night's events. The rumors were wild, painting me as everything from a heartless villain to a downtrodden victim. I ignored most of them, but it was one call that I couldn't just swipe away, my mom. "Chloe, honey, what's this mess I'm hearing about you and Mike? And something about a restaurant blow up?" Her voice was a mix of concern and confusion. I sighed, rubbing the bridge of my nose. "It's a long story, Mom. The short version?" I stood up for myself, and things didn't go well. There was a pause on the other end, and then, "Well, I always said that woman was trouble. You're better off without them, you know." Hearing my mom say it out loud, it hit different. It was one thing to walk away, but another to hear that maybe, just maybe, I did the right thing. "Yeah, I know. Just didn't expect everything to implode like this." A few weeks after I'd moved out, I ran into one of our mutual friends, Jenna, at the coffee shop. She wasted no time diving into the latest gossip. "Chloe, I heard about the split, and everything else. Carol's been saying some wild stuff, you know?" I took a sip of my coffee, already knowing where this was headed. "Let me guess, it's all my fault? I'm the wicked witch who ruined their lives." Jenna looked uncomfortable, but nodded. "Yeah, something like that. Lucy's engagement is off, and they're saying you're to blame for the dinner fiasco, too." I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bitter. Of course, they are. Because it's easier to blame me than admit they're a pair of entitled, manipulative. "Hey, I know it's tough," Jenna cut in. "But you're better off without that drama." Despite the rumors, the whispers, and the blame game, there was a sense of relief that came with being free of it all. Free of Carol's constant meddling, Lucy's passive-aggressive jabs, and the never-ending cycle of drama that came with being part of their family. As I navigated my new life, word got back to me about Mike and his current living situation. Turns out, after our divorce, he moved right back in with Carol and Lucy. The three of them, all under one roof again. The thought brought a mix of emotions, but mostly, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was confirmation that walking away was the right choice, not just for me, but for my peace of mind. I heard through the grapevine, snippets of conversations at local cafes and the occasional overheard chat at the grocery store, that their antics hadn't stopped with me. If anything, they ramped up. Stories of Carol's latest schemes and Lucy's outlandish demands were making the rounds, painting a picture of a family consumed by their own greed and arrogance. Their reputation in town took hit after hit, each rumor another nail in the coffin of their social standing. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, the drama that had once consumed my life started to feel like a distant memory. I was settling into my new normal, finding peace in the quiet moments and solace in my work. One crisp autumn evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Alex, a colleague I'd become close friends with over the last few months. "Drinks tonight? You need a break, and I've got some big news." Curious and in dire need of a distraction, I agreed. We met at a cozy little bar downtown, a world away from the high-stakes drama that used to define my evenings. "So, spill it. What's this big news?" I asked, sipping on my drink, the warmth of the whiskey a welcome reprieve from the chill outside. Alex's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I'm starting my own firm, and I want you on board. You're one of the best lawyers I know, Chloe." What do you say? The offer took me by surprise. It was the kind of opportunity I'd dreamed of, but in the whirlwind of my personal life, I'd forgotten how much I longed for a fresh professional start too. Wow, Alex. That's incredible. I'm honored, really. Let me think it over. The next morning, I woke up feeling more determined than ever. I called Alex, my decision made. Let's do it. I'm in. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. We found an office space, started building our client list, and every day felt like a step towards something exciting, something mine. And then, amidst the chaos of starting the new firm, I bumped into Mike. It was the first time we'd seen each other since the divorce was finalized. The encounter was awkward, charged with the ghosts of our shared past. "Chloe, hey, you're looking good," he said, the words feeling like a peace offering of sorts. "Thanks, Mike. You too. How's everything?" "We're getting by. Mom and Lucy, they're still them, you know?" I nodded, no longer feeling the sting of their names. "I'm sure they are. Listen, Mike, I wish you all the best, really." As I walked away, I realized that this was what moving on felt like. It wasn't forgetting the past but learning from it, not dwelling on the hurt but focusing on the growth that came from it. I was moving forward, one step at a time, into a future that was all mine to shape. I'm Jess, a 26-year-old nurse who's seen enough to know life ain't always a smooth ride. The day that rock band rolled into town was a break from the usual chaos. Their music was my escape, something my soul craved more than my next breath. That night, I decided to let loose, heading to their concert alone, not knowing it'd change my life. The arena was packed, the air electric with anticipation. I wove through the crowd, finding a spot that felt like it was made just for me. That's when I bumped into him, literally. A tall guy with a mischievous smile, wearing a band tee that looked like it had seen better days. "Hey, watch it!" I snapped, more out of surprise than annoyance. "Sorry, didn't see you there," he replied, his grin widening. "You here alone?" "Yeah, and by the looks of it, so are you." I shot back, my defenses up. He laughed, a sound that seemed to cut through the pre-concert buzz. "Name's Tom. And yeah, I wouldn't miss this for the world. These guys are like the soundtrack to my life." "Jess," I said, offering a hand grudgingly. His grip was firm, reassuring somehow. "Same here. Grew up with their music." We chatted as if we'd known each other for years, not minutes. Tom had a way of making me laugh, really laugh, something I hadn't done in a while. When the concert started, we were lost in the music, together yet alone in our little bubble. After the encore, neither of us wanted the night to end. "Know a decent cafe around here?" Tom asked, his eyes searching mine. "Might do. Follow me," I said, leading the way. The cafe was quiet, a stark contrast to the concert's frenzy. We found a secluded corner, our conversation flowing as easily as the coffee. "So, nurse, huh? Bet you've got stories," Tom said, his voice a mix of curiosity and respect. "More than I can count. And what about you? What's your deal?" I asked, leaning in. "I work in IT. Not as exciting as saving lives, but it pays the bills." He shrugged, a hint of humility in his eyes. We talked about everything and nothing, from our craziest dreams to our mundane daily gripes. It felt natural, easy. Before we knew it, hours had passed. "Should probably get going," Tom said reluctantly. "But I don't want this to be the last time we talk." "Me neither," I admitted, feeling a connection I couldn't quite explain. We exchanged phones, typing in our numbers with the promise of a call. As we said goodbye, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was the music, the night, or just Tom himself, but I walked away feeling lighter, my heart pounding in my chest. After a few months of dating Tom, the day came to meet his family, or more accurately, his mom. He'd been upfront about living with her, saying she was all he had in terms of family. I respected that. My own family was just my grandma, after all. Tom's place was modest, a cozy little house with a garden that looked like it needed a bit of love. "Mom's inside," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice as we approached the door. It struck me then how important this was to him, and suddenly, I was the one feeling jittery. The door swung open to reveal a woman in her late 50s, her hair a tangle of curls, eyes sharp as they landed on me. "So, you're Jess," she said, her voice carrying a note that I couldn't quite place. Was it curiosity? Suspicion? "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Johnson," I offered, extending a hand that she took after a brief hesitation. "Call me Linda," she said, leading us into the living room. The place was neat, filled with photos of Tom at various ages. It was clear he was the center of her world. We sat, and Linda wasted no time diving in. "Tom tells me you're a nurse. That's a hard job. You plan on doing that long?" I nodded, sensing where this was heading. "I love my job, but I'm also planning to study further, maybe become a doctor someday." Linda's eyes narrowed a bit. "A doctor, huh? That's a lot of school. Expensive, too." Tom jumped in, trying to smooth the waters. "Mom, Jess is really passionate about her work. It's one of the things I admire about her." Linda turned her gaze to Tom, and then back to me, her expression softening slightly. "Tommy here has always been my rock. After his dad left, it was just the two of us. I've given everything to him, you know." I caught Tom's eye, a silent communication passing between us. I knew this was hard for him, torn between the two most important women in his life. Linda continued, "I rely on Tom for a lot. He's been so good to me, giving me half his salary every month. It's only fair, after all I've sacrificed." The air in the room felt heavier, the tension palpable. I didn't know what to say. It was clear Linda expected this arrangement to continue, even with me in the picture. "And what about your family, Jess?" Linda's question snapped me back to the moment. "I was raised by my grandmother," I said, my voice steady. "My parents died when I was young. Grandma's all I have." Linda nodded, a strange satisfaction in her eyes. "Well, if you and Tom are serious, I'd expect you to contribute as well. $800 a month should cover it." I choked on the tea I'd been sipping. $800? Tom's hand found mine under the table, squeezing it gently. "We'll work something out, Mom. Jess and I are a team now." When Tom and I decided to tie the knot, we knew it wouldn't be a lavish affair, but nothing prepared me for the battle over our wedding plans. Linda had her own ideas about saving money, which basically meant cutting down our guest list to a handful and scrapping any unnecessary celebrations. I wanted simple, sure, but I also wanted some joy, some celebration of us. One evening, as we sat down with Linda to discuss the wedding plans, the tension was thicker than the coffee Tom had brewed. "So, I was thinking," Linda began, in that way that told you she wasn't just thinking, she was deciding. Why waste money on a big venue when we have a perfectly good backyard? Tom squeezed my hand under the table, a silent plea for patience. "Mom, Jess, and I were hoping for a bit more, celebration. Not just a backyard thing." Linda's eyes narrowed, her lips pursing in that familiar line of disapproval. "And who's going to pay for this celebration? You too? With what money?" I took a deep breath, readying myself. "We've been saving, Linda. And it's not like we want something extravagant. Just something a bit more special than the backyard." Linda scoffed. "Special? You think spending money you don't have on one day is special? You know what's special? Security. Not starting your married life in debt." I could feel my patience wearing thin, but I held my ground. "We understand the value of money, Linda. We're not talking about going into debt. Just a modest celebration at a small venue. We've done the math." Despite Linda's protests, we managed to reach a compromise of sorts, a small venue, close family and friends, and a strict budget. Linda insisted on overseeing the catering, claiming she could cut costs, which meant we ended up with a buffet that was more potluck than professional. On the day of our wedding, the venue looked, well, modest. My grandma, the one person from my family there, whispered to me as I readied myself, "This Linda, she's a piece of work, isn't she? Just remember, dear, you're marrying Tom, not his mother." The ceremony was short and sweet. Tom looked handsome, and when I walked down the aisle towards him, the look in his eyes told me we'd made the right choice. It was our moment, and even Linda couldn't tarnish that. At the reception, as guests mingled and the homemade buffet was served, Linda took it upon herself to remind everyone how much money we'd saved. "Just think what they can now put towards their future," she announced to a group of our friends, who nodded politely, their expressions a mix of amusement and sympathy. Tom's best man, Mike, a childhood friend who knew the family dynamics all too well, leaned over to us with a grin. "Hey, at least she didn't charge entry, right?" I laughed, the tension of the past weeks melting away in the warmth of the moment. Tom wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me close. "We did it, Jess. Despite everything, we did it." "Yeah," I agreed, leaning my head against his shoulder. "And now, we start our lives together, just us." "And Linda," Tom added with a wry smile, earning him a playful jab in the ribs from me. Settling into married life with Tom was like navigating a boat on choppy waters. Our tiny rented apartment became our haven, a place where we planned to build our future together. But the shadow of financial strain loomed large over us, darkening even our brightest moments. One chilly evening, as we sat huddled over our budget spreadsheet, the reality of our situation hit me hard. "Look at this, Tom," I said, pointing at the screen. "After rent, bills, and your mom's $800, there's barely anything left for us." Tom rubbed his eyes, weary from the long day. "I know, Jess. But what can we do? Mom depends on that money." I sighed, frustration bubbling inside me. "But does she really need that much? We're barely scraping by as it is. And we've been putting off so many things, like fixing the car, and even thinking about a down payment for a house." Tom's expression hardened, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. "Jess, we've been over this. My mom raised me by herself. It's my duty to take care of her now." The argument ended with us in a tense silence, each stewing in our own stubbornness. But it didn't end there. Linda, ever the persistent one, took to calling me regularly, each conversation a thinly veiled reminder not to forget the $800 monthly tribute to her bank account. And when calls didn't cut it, she'd appear at our doorstep, lamenting her hard life and hinting heavily that a little more financial support wouldn't go amiss. I did my best to ignore the hints, to smile and nod and change the subject. But it grated on me, the constant pressure, the relentless reminders of a debt Tom felt we owed. Finally, one evening, after another of Linda's visits, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Tom, we need to talk about your mom," I started, the day's frustrations bubbling to the surface. "I'm tired, Tom. Tired of the hints, the constant pressure for more money. We're saving for a down payment, for our future. Can't she see that?" Tom's face went from puzzled to dark in seconds. "My mom is always right, Jess," he said, his voice icy. "You have no right to talk about her like that. She sacrificed everything for me." His words hit like a slap. "So what, our plans, our future, doesn't count for anything?" I shot back, anger rising. That was it. Tom shut down, walls up, and suddenly we were two strangers living in the same space. He wouldn't talk to me, not really. Our conversations dwindled to nothing, replaced by messages left on stickers on the fridge. "Need milk. Working late." The bare minimum of communication. One rare evening, when the silence felt a bit less oppressive, I decided to broach the subject, the words tumbling out of me before I could think better of it. "Tom, do you ever think about, us having kids?" Tom, who'd been half focused on some bills, looked up, his expression unreadable. "Kids? Jess, you know how Mom feels about that. She's already stretched thin with just us helping out." "Yeah, but it's not about her, is it? It's about us, what we want. I said, a hint of desperation creeping into my voice. Tom sighed, setting the bills aside. I know, but think about it. The money, the time. How are we supposed to manage all that? Plus, Mom, she's outright against it. Says it's too much expense, too much hassle. I felt a flash of anger, frustration. So, what? Her word is law now? What about what we want, Tom? What about our life together? The room went quiet again, the air thick with words we couldn't seem to say. Tom finally broke the silence. I just don't think now's the right time, Jess. Maybe later, when things are better. The next day, Linda's unannounced visit threw gasoline on the already smoldering embers. I heard you two talking about kids, she started, her tone accusatory as if the mere thought was an affront to her. Yeah, so? I said, my patience worn thin. Linda's eyes narrowed. So, you think you can just bring kids into this mess? You can barely take care of yourselves. Where do you think the money for that will come from? Out of what you should be giving me. Her words stung, not because they were true, but because of the blatant disregard for our autonomy, our desires as a couple. It's our life, Linda. Our decision. I shot back, my voice firm. Your decision? No, my son's decision. And he knows better than to make a foolish mistake like that, Linda countered, her voice rising. The argument spiraled from there, voices raising, words that couldn't be taken back flying between us. It ended with me saying something I'd never thought I'd have to. Maybe we shouldn't see each other for a while. This is too much. Linda left in a huff, and Tom, when he found out, sided with her. Our home felt more like a battleground, each of us entrenched in our positions, the idea of starting a family now a no man's land between us. It started with a phone notification that blinked innocently enough, but held a punch that knocked the wind out of me. Tom had transferred $1,000 to his mom this month, not the usual $800. My mind raced, confusion and anger swirling together. When I confronted him, his response was as cold as the look in his eyes. It's my decision, Jess. It's for my mom, he said, his voice flat, leaving no room for discussion. But we agreed on a budget, Tom. We have our own needs, our own plans. How could you just change that without even talking to me? I shot back, my voice rising with every word. Tom shrugged, a dismissive gesture that stung more than I expected. Things change. I don't have to consult you on everything. That was the moment I felt it, the crack in what I thought was solid, the betrayal of our partnership. But the worst was yet to come. Days later, a friend from work, Carrie, called me, her voice hesitant. Jess, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but I think you should know. She trailed off, the pause heavy with dread. What is it, Carrie? I urged, a sinking feeling in my stomach. I saw Tom's profile on a dating site. He even messaged me, not realizing who I was at first. I'm so sorry, she finished, her voice a mix of sympathy and discomfort. My world stopped. The air left my lungs in a rush, and I felt dizzy. Are you sure? I managed to whisper, clinging to a thread of hope that it was all a mistake. Yes, I'm sure. I can send you the screenshots if you want, Carrie offered, and true to her word, she did. The evidence was undeniable. There was Tom's picture, his profile, and the messages he'd sent, flirting, suggesting they meet up. The betrayal cut deep, a wound I wasn't sure could ever heal. When Tom came home that night, I was waiting, the screenshots glowing accusingly on my tablet. His reaction was one of shock, then anger, not at being caught but at being confronted. What, you're spying on me now? Invading my privacy? He exploded, the audacity of his anger almost laughable. Spare me, Tom. How long? How long have you been doing this? I demanded, my voice shaking with emotion. Tom's anger fizzled out, replaced by a resignation that was somehow worse. I don't know, Jess. A while, I guess. I needed something else. Something more. More than me. More than us. I said, the reality settling in like a stone in my stomach. Yeah, I guess so, he admitted, and with those words, the last of my hope evaporated. I want a divorce, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Tom looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I married. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a cold indifference. Fine, he said simply. If that's what you want. The divorce proceedings were quick, devoid of the messy entanglements that come with shared assets or children. I moved back to my grandmother's house, the only place that still felt like home, carrying with me the pain of betrayal, but also a sense of relief. 3 months post-divorce, and life had started to settle into a new kind of normal, or as normal as it could get without Tom and his mom, Linda, in the picture. That is until my world got rocked again, but this time by loss. My grandmother passed away, leaving behind a void no one could fill. Along with the heartache came a surprise. She left me her house and a hefty sum of $800,000. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more surreal, Linda showed up at my doorstep, bursting with a kind of frantic excitement that felt out of place given the recent funeral. Jess, darling, I heard about your inheritance. What a blessing. Linda gushed, not wasting a second on pleasantries. I stared at her, incredulous. Linda, what are you doing here? She brushed past me into the house, as if we were still family. Now that you've come into this money, you can surely afford to help me out a bit more. Not just the usual $1,000, but maybe double that? And, oh, a small gift wouldn't hurt. Something nice, expensive. Her words were like a slap in the face, each one more absurd than the last. But it was her next statement that really threw me. And since you're so well off now, I suppose it's okay for you to have a baby with Tom. I mean, with this kind of money, why not? I couldn't help it, laughter bubbled up from within me, loud and uncontrollable. Linda looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. Linda, you do know Tom and I are divorced, right? 3 months ago. Your son and I are done. Over. The look on her face was priceless, a mix of shock, disbelief, and something that looked suspiciously like panic. Divorced? But Tom never said. Why would he hide that? Maybe because he didn't want to crawl back to Mommy's house? Or maybe he thought you'd cut him off financially? I shrugged, the absurdity of the situation not lost on me. Linda fumbled for her phone, dialing Tom in a frenzy. The conversation was short and heated, her voice rising with every word until she finally hung up, her face pale. He said it's true. Said he didn't tell me because he wanted to maintain independence. Independence. Now he tells me this, when we could have been rich. Linda, it's time for you to go, I said, my patience wearing thin. She stood, defeated, but then, with a last-ditch effort, she turned to me. Jess, can't you reconsider? For the sake of the family? Tom made a mistake, but surely. I cut her off with another round of laughter. Linda, there is no family, not between me and Tom. And after everything, you really think I'd go back to him? Please, leave. One morning, as I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, the sun casting gentle patterns on the table, there was a knock at the door. Hesitant, I approached, half expecting Linda or, worse, Tom, to be on the other side. Instead, I found an old friend from nursing school, Maya, her face bright with a smile that was both comforting and contagious. I heard about your grandma, Jess. I'm so sorry. And then I heard about, well, everything else, Maya said, stepping inside as I waved her in. We sat down, and over coffee, we caught up on life, on the turns mine had taken, and on her adventures since we last spoke. It was Maya who, after hearing my story, looked me dead in the eye and said, Jess, it's time. Time to move on, for real. You've got this chance, this freedom. What's stopping you from taking the leap? Her words struck a chord. I've been thinking, I started, my mind racing with possibilities. Maybe it's time to go back to school, like I always wanted. Get that degree, move into a field I'm passionate about. Yes. Maya clapped her hands, her excitement palpable. That's the spirit. Look, life's thrown you some curveballs, but you're still standing. And now you've got this incredible opportunity to do something just for you. The conversation with Maya lit a fire under me. It was the push I needed to finally make a decision, to move forward with purpose. I started researching programs that night, my heart set on advancing my career in a way I'd only ever dreamed of. But life has a funny way of testing you. Just as I was settling into this new chapter, Tom appeared on my doorstep one evening, looking every bit the man I once thought I knew. "Jess, can we talk?" he asked, a nervous edge to his voice I wasn't used to. I hesitated, a part of me curious, another part wary. "All right, Tom. Talk." He shuffled uncomfortably, looking around as if searching for the right words in the air around him. I heard about your inheritance. And about what you're doing with it. Going back to school, that's great, Jess." I raised an eyebrow, crossing my arms. "Thanks, Tom. Was there something else?" He sighed, a deep, weary sound. "I guess I just wanted to see if there was a chance for us. I've been doing some thinking and—" "No, Tom," I cut him off, my voice firm but not unkind. "There's no chance for us. Not anymore. I've moved on, really moved on. And you should too." As he turned to leave, I felt a weight lift, a final closure on a chapter that had dragged on too long. In the days that followed, I found myself more focused, more determined. I was building a life on my own terms, free from the expectations and disappointments of the past. My studies gave me a sense of direction, and my grandmother's inheritance allowed me the freedom to pursue my dreams without restraint. I'm Sarah. Teaching vocal lessons is what gets me up in the morning. At 42, I've seen my share of bright-eyed kids dreaming of the big stage. But it was Emma who brought a twist to my tale. 14, with a voice that needed work but had potential. It was her dad, Jack, though, who flipped my world. "Miss Sarah, my dad's here to pick me up," Emma announced one day, her voice cutting through my thoughts like a sharp knife. I glanced up, expecting the usual parent. But there stood Jack. Not what I expected. Tall, with a look of someone who's seen stuff, but kept standing. "Hi, I'm Jack. Emma's been going on about her lessons. You must be Sarah." His voice was straightforward, no frills. I liked that. "Yeah, that's me. Emma's got talent. Just needs a bit more push," I said, offering my hand. His handshake was firm, honest. "Appreciate you helping her out. I'm clueless about this stuff. Her mom was the singer." I caught the past tense. "I'm sorry," I said, the standard response, but his nod told me he'd heard it a million times. "No worries. We're managing. Aren't we, Em?" His look towards Emma was full of that silent communication only parents and kids have. Emma rolled her eyes, the universal kid signal for parents, right, but smiled. "Yeah, we're good." The conversation should have ended there, but Jack lingered. "You know, I'm trying to get her more into music. Keep her busy. Her brother too, Alex. Kid's a ball of energy." I laughed. Music's a great outlet. Keeps them focused on something positive. "Exactly," Jack agreed. "Hey, you ever do group lessons? Or something for a hyper 13-year-old who thinks he's the next big thing?" I shrugged. "I can handle 13-year-olds. Bring him by. We'll see if music or noise is his thing." Jack chuckled, and that sound did funny things to my stomach. "Deal. I'll bring him next time." "Thanks, Sarah." As they left, I shook my head, dismissing the fluttery feeling. Jack was just a dad, a widower, trying to raise his kids right. Nothing more. But life, as I found out, loves throwing curveballs. Jack started showing up more, sometimes with Alex, sometimes alone under the pretext of discussing Emma's progress. We'd chat, and those chats started veering off music more often than not. One day, as autumn painted the world in hues of gold and crimson, Jack turned to me, a half smile on his face. "Sarah, would you consider going out with me? Like, a date?" I blinked, surprised. "A date?" "Yeah," he said, his voice firmer than his casual stance suggested. "I like talking to you. The kids like you. And I want to see where this could go." It was unexpected, this shift from casual chats to the possibility of something more. But looking into Jack's earnest eyes, I felt a pull, an interest I hadn't felt in a long time. "Okay, Jack. Let's see where this goes," I found myself saying, a smile breaking through my usual reserve. Merging into Jack's world was like stepping onto a stage without a rehearsal. Emma was easy, music was our language. Alex, though, was a different beat, skeptical of a new woman in his dad's life, protective of his sister and the memory of his mom. And then there was Mary, Jack's mom, a matriarch with warmth and sharpness all rolled into one. The day Jack introduced me to Alex, the kid sized me up like I was a new recruit. "So, you're the music teacher," Alex said, crossing his arms, his eyes narrowed. It wasn't unfriendly, but it wasn't open arms either. "That's me. And you must be the next big thing in music, from what I've heard," I shot back, trying to break the ice with a smile. He cracked a grin, the skepticism in his eyes softening a bit. "Maybe. Guess we'll see if you're any good." "Challenge accepted," I said, and from there, things started to ease into a rhythm. Alex had energy for days and a curious mind. He didn't take to music like Emma, but he respected the passion behind it. Meeting Mary was another story. She had a reputation for being tough as nails, with a heart of gold hidden somewhere beneath. Walking into her house for the first time, I was greeted with a scrutinizing gaze that could make a seasoned performer sweat. "You're Sarah. Heard a lot about you," she started, her voice firm but not unkind. "Good things, I hope," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She chuckled, a sound that carried both warmth and a hint of challenge. "Depends on who you ask. Sit down. Let's see if you pass the test." The afternoon unfolded with conversations that swung from blunt to deeply personal. Mary didn't hold back, asking about my intentions with her son, my thoughts on family, and my ambitions. It was like a verbal sparring match, but beneath her tough exterior, I saw glimpses of the love she had for her family. "Jack's been through a lot. The kids, too. They need stability, not just another person passing through," Mary said, locking eyes with me. "I'm not here for a temporary gig, Mary. I care about them. About Jack. I'm in this," I responded, my voice carrying a conviction I felt deep in my bones. She studied me for a moment longer, then nodded, as if I'd passed some unspoken test. "Good. They could use someone like you. Just remember, kids and Jack come first. Always." "Always," I echoed, understanding the weight of her words. As months turned into a year, my bond with Jack's family deepened. Emma and Alex, each in their own way, started to let me in. We had our moments, disagreements, misunderstandings, the usual family dynamics, but underneath it all was a growing sense of belonging. Jack's proposal came on a quiet evening, after a day filled with laughter and music. It was simple, no grand gestures, just him and me, and a question that promised a new chapter. "Sarah, I've seen you with the kids, with my mom, with me. You've become a part of us, a part we didn't even know was missing. Marry me? Let's make this official." I looked at him, at the man who had become my unexpected harmony, and without a moment's hesitation, I said, "Yes." The wedding was small, an intimate affair with those who mattered most. Mary, despite her tough exterior, shed a few tears, whispering, "Take care of them, Sarah. Your family now." And as I looked around at my new family, Jack, Emma, Alex, and Mary, I realized I wasn't just stepping into their lives, we were creating a new melody together. One that had its dissonances, but was ours, uniquely beautiful in its complexity. Life with Jack and the kids had settled into a sort of comfortable routine, filled with school runs, music lessons, and family dinners. But as life tends to do, it threw us a curveball that changed everything. Mary's health took a nosedive, leaving her paralyzed and in need of constant care. Jack decided the best thing was to move her into our home. It made sense, but I don't think any of us were truly prepared for the impact it would have. From the get-go, the weight of caring for Mary fell heavily on my shoulders. Jack was caught up with work, and the kids, well, they were still kids. I didn't mind at first, Mary was family, after all. But as time went on, the strain began to show. One particularly tough day, after a grueling session of trying to get Mary comfortable and dealing with a mountain of household chores, I sat down at the kitchen table, feeling utterly defeated. Mary had been particularly difficult, refusing to eat or take her medication, and Jack had been no help, locked away in his office. I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't hear Jack come in. He stood there, watching me, an unreadable expression on his face. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, his voice void of the warmth it once held. I braced myself, knowing this conversation wouldn't be good. "What's up?" "It's about my mom. And you. You seem off lately. Not handling things as well as you used to." I stared at him, incredulous. "Off? Jack, I'm doing everything I can. I'm tired. I'm stressed. I'm trying to be there for your mom, for the kids, for you. And it's never enough." He took a step back, as if my words were physical blows. "I know you're trying, but it's not just about effort, Sarah. It's about results. And right now, we're not seeing them." His words were like a slap in the face. Results. As if I was just another employee failing to meet my targets, not his wife, struggling to keep our family together. Years rolled by, each one more challenging than the last. Mary's condition didn't improve, and my relationship with Jack and the kids, especially as they grew into adults, became more strained. The once vibrant connection I shared with Emma and Alex, built on music and mutual respect, faded into polite indifference. Then Mary passed away. It was a difficult time for all of us, a period marked by grief and reflection. I thought, naively, that maybe this would bring us closer, that shared sorrow would mend the cracks in our family. But I was wrong. After the funeral, things took a turn for the worse. Jack's demeanor changed overnight. The man who once looked at me with love and gratitude now regarded me with disdain. "You're just not the same anymore, Sarah," Jack snapped one evening, his words laced with a bitterness that caught me off guard. "You've let yourself go. You're old, you're ugly. I'm tired of you." I stood there, shocked. His harsh words felt like a physical blow, leaving me speechless and hurt. "Jack, how can you say that? After everything?" I started, but he cut me off. "Everything? You mean taking care of my kids and my mother? That was your job, Sarah. I tolerated you because you did the chores, nothing more." His words were like a knife, twisting deeper with each syllable. And the kids, now adults, weren't any better. Emma, once my closest ally, turned cold. "You really have no one but us, and you're pushing even us away. You're just a lonely, useless woman," she said, her voice void of the warmth it once held. Alex was no kinder, seizing every opportunity to belittle me. "You should be grateful we even let you stay here," he sneered whenever he passed me in the hall. I couldn't believe these were the same people I had loved and cared for, had considered my family. The transformation was stark, their contempt for me a constant reminder of how much had changed. It wasn't just the emotional toll, my body began to betray me too. My legs, once strong and sure, now ached with a pain that made every step a chore. The doctor's words were clinical, detached, but they hit hard. "It's chronic," he said, scribbling something on his pad. "You'll need to manage it, adjust your activities." Adjust my activities. As if my life wasn't already a series of adjustments, concessions to a family that saw me as nothing more than a burden. One day, as I struggled to stand after a long bout of cleaning, Jack walked in, his eyes scanning the room, always looking for something to criticize. "What's wrong with you now?" he asked, his voice dripping with impatience. I tried to steady myself, to push past the pain. My legs, I started. They'd been really bad today. The doctor said. He cut me off with a wave of his hand, a dismissive gesture that felt like a slap. Always something with you, isn't it? Can't even rely on you to do the basic chores around here without making a big deal out of it. Teaching at the private school, my passion and my escape, became impossible. Jack's reaction to my diagnosis was as cold as ice. So, what? You're just going to sit around all day now? Great, another mouth to feed without any use. He sneered the day I told him about my condition, his words cutting deeper than the sharp pain in my legs. I wanted to scream, to tell him how much he was hurting me, but I knew it would only make things worse. So, I bit back the pain and the tears, trying to find some way to navigate this new reality. Living in Jack's house became a daily reminder of my dependence. I was reduced to limping around, trying to keep the house in order, cooking meals that were often met with criticism or indifference. The pain was constant, a sharp reminder of my predicament, but I pushed through, terrified of what would happen if I stopped. Jack and the kids lived as if nothing had changed, as if my struggles were just a minor inconvenience to their lives. The inheritance from Mary's passing seemed to ignite a spending spree, new gadgets, clothes, jewelry, all flaunted in front of me as if to underscore my exclusion from their lives. You should be grateful we're keeping you around, Jack would say, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Without us, you'd be on the street. Remember that. Emma and Alex took their cues from their father, treating me more like an unwanted servant than a stepmother. Don't forget to wash my new jeans, Sarah. Wouldn't want them ruined like you ruin everything else, Emma would toss over her shoulder, her words sharp as knives. Alex was no better. Make sure dinner's on time tonight. We've got places to be, and we can't wait around for you to limp around the kitchen, he'd say, his disdain barely veiled. I harbored fantasies of leaving, of finding some way to reclaim my independence and dignity. But the reality was harsh. With no income, no savings, and a body that betrayed me at every turn, I was stuck. My dreams of escape seemed just that, dreams, distant and unattainable. In the midst of my lowest point, feeling trapped and useless, I stumbled upon something that sparked a flicker of hope in me. It was during one of those long, sleepless nights, scrolling aimlessly through the internet on my old, barely functioning laptop. I found a forum for vocal teachers giving online lessons. The idea struck me like a lightning bolt. The next day, with the house empty and my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear, I set up a makeshift studio in the corner of my room. I wasn't sure if anyone would be interested, but I had to try. I recorded a simple introduction video, my voice shaky but determined, and posted it online. To my astonishment, inquiries started coming in. People were interested in learning from me, despite my physical limitations. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt valued for my skills and knowledge. Jack and the kids noticed the change in me, but didn't know the cause. What's got into you? Jack asked one evening, his tone suspicious as he caught me humming while preparing dinner. Just feeling a bit better today, I replied, keeping my eyes on the task at hand, hiding the fear that he would disapprove or, worse, try to stop me. He snorted, dismissing my response. Well, don't get too happy. You've still got your duties around here. I nodded, my heart sinking, but I didn't let his words deter me. The hours I spent teaching online became my sanctuary, a place where I could be myself, share my love for music, and forget, even if just for a little while, the pain and humiliation I endured daily. I invested the little money I made from teaching into better equipment, slowly but surely building my online presence. The physical pain was still there, a constant reminder of my limitations, but when I was teaching, it receded into the background, overshadowed by the joy of connecting with my students. As the months went by, I took a moment to look at the numbers, something I had been avoiding, afraid to jinx it. But there it was, clear as day on my screen. I was making money. Real money. More than I ever made teaching at the private school. More than I ever thought possible from the confines of this oppressive house. And shockingly, more than Jack made with his so-called prestigious job. I remember sitting there, staring at the figures, a mix of disbelief and triumph washing over me. For so long, I had felt like a burden, a financial leech in Jack's eyes, but here I was, earning my own way, and not just scraping by but actually doing better than him. For a moment, I let myself bask in the success, allowing the numbers to speak for themselves. I was doing this. I was making it happen, despite everything that had been thrown my way. It was a silent victory, one I couldn't share with anyone in the house, but it was mine all the same. The betrayal that came was not just a single moment of cruelty, but a culmination of years of disregard and contempt, crystallized into one devastating dinner conversation. There we were, sitting around the table, me serving them as I always did, when Jack decided to drop his bombshell with a smirk that I had come to loathe. I got promoted at work, he started, and for a brief, foolish moment, I thought maybe this was good news, something positive for once. But then he continued. So, I bought a new house. A better one, fitting for my status. That's when the air around me grew cold, my hand stilled, the plate I was holding nearly slipping from my grasp. Before I could even muster a congratulations, he landed his cruel blow. And I'll be moving there with the kids. Not you. You're not coming. His words were like a slap, but the mocking laugh that followed was a knife to the heart. I mean, come on, Sarah. Did you really think you'd fit in? An old limp like you? No, it's time I found someone younger, more suitable. The laughter that erupted from Emma cut even deeper. Yeah, and guess what? This old house? Sold. Enjoy the streets, Sarah. I stood there, frozen, as he slid the divorce papers across the table. The audacity, the sheer coldness of it all, was staggering. Yet, as I looked at those papers, something within me refused to break. I didn't cry, didn't plead. I simply signed them, each stroke of my name a silent vow to myself. When morning came, I was ready. Jack and the kids watched with a mix of surprise and that familiar contempt as I hauled my bags to the door. Their parting words were meant to wound, to kick me when I was down. Hope you like the flophouses, Sarah, Jack sneered, a cruel smile playing on his lips. But I walked out of that house with my head held high, the weight of their insults falling away with each step I took. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom, a clarity that had been missing from my life. Settling into my new rented apartment was like breathing fresh air for the first time in years. It was my space, my sanctuary, where I could dive into my online vocal teaching without looking over my shoulder. Hearing from friends, I found out Jack had moved into that fancy new house with the kids. True to form, instead of being smart with the money from the old house, they blew it on all sorts of nonsense. Typical. That's when I decided to play my hand. Over the years, I'd saved voicemails and recorded moments of their verbal lashings, a dark library of the abuse I suffered. Without a second thought, I sent them off to Jack's boss. It felt like releasing doves into a storm, but these birds carried grenades. The call I got from Jack after was music to my ears, but not the kind I usually taught. Sarah, what have you done? He screamed into the phone, his voice a mix of rage and panic. They're demoting me, cutting my salary. How could you? In the background, I could hear Emma and Alex, their voices shrill, hurling insults my way. But their words felt distant, inconsequential. Oh, Jack, I said, a laugh bubbling up. Looks like you're the one who might end up without a roof over your head. Meanwhile, I'm here, thinking about buying my own place. How the tables have turned. The silence that followed was sweet, filled with their disbelief and shock. Then Jack, ever the beggar now, started his plea. Sarah, please, you have to help us. We could lose the house. The kids, think about the kids. We'll take you back, I swear. We'll do anything. Hearing them grovel, offering to take me back as if they were doing me a favor, was the cherry on top. Take me back? To be your maid again? No, thanks. I've got better things to do. Hanging up the phone, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a final closure to a chapter of my life that had brought me nothing but pain. They were desperate, flailing in the mess they'd made, and for once, I wasn't there to clean it up. Through the grapevine, friends let slip that Jack, along with Emma and Alex, had been evicted. Couldn't keep up with the mortgage, they said. Now, they were crammed into some small apartment, the kids juggling jobs to make ends meet. The twist of fate wasn't lost on me. After everything they put me through, there was a bitter taste of justice in the air. Can you believe it? I mused aloud during a call with one of my closest friends from the teaching community, Lena. Jack and the kids, scrambling to keep a roof over their heads. After all that talk about me ending up in a flophouse. Lena's laugh crackled through the phone. Karma's a real kicker, ain't it? You, on the other hand, are living proof that what goes around comes around. You're doing amazing, Sarah. Then came the opportunity of a lifetime. A well-known music school reached out, having heard of my teaching success. They offered me a position, not just as a teacher, but as a coordinator for their online program. It was more than a job, it was recognition, a chance to influence and inspire on a scale I had never imagined. As I sat down to sign the contract, a wave of gratitude washed over me. To think, not so long ago, I was convinced my life had crumbled beyond repair. And now, here I was, signing a contract that was not just a job offer, but a symbol of my journey from darkness into light. The celebration that night was simple, just me and a few close friends I had made along the way, including Lena, who had quickly become a pillar of support and friendship. As we raised our glasses in a toast, Lena leaned over and whispered, "You're an inspiration, Sarah. You've turned your life into a symphony of success." Her words struck a chord, and I found myself overwhelmed with emotion. Thank you, Lena. It's been quite the journey. But you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. The hardships, the pain, it all led me here, to this moment, to a life I can be proud of. As the night wore on, filled with music and laughter, I realized that this was more than just a new chapter, it was a whole new book, a story of triumph over adversity, of finding harmony in the chaos. Hey there, I'm Ellie. Now, I ain't much for beating around the bush, so I'll just dive right in. I'm 26, a web designer by trade, and up until the point this whole mess started, I was pretty much your run-of-the-mill kind of girl. Worked for a big company, had a small but tight circle of friends, and lived a life that didn't have too much excitement. That all changed at a party thrown by some mutual friends. It was one of those parties where you show up thinking you'll just stick to the walls, nurse a drink, and maybe, just maybe, have a decent conversation with someone. Little did I know, it was the night that was gonna turn my whole world upside down. The place was buzzing with people when I got there, and right away, I noticed him, Josh. The guy was like a magnet. Everyone seemed drawn to him, and he was soaking it up, especially the attention from the ladies. I ain't gonna lie, he was cute. Real cute. And he had this charm about him that made you want to get to know him better. But me? I figured I didn't stand a chance. I was more the jeans and t-shirt kind of girl, not one of those flashy types he seemed to be chatting up. I found myself a corner and was halfway through my drink when Josh sauntered over. Hey, I don't think we've met. I'm Josh, he said, all smooth like. I choked on my drink. Ellie, I managed to get out, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. Real smooth, Ellie. He chuckled, that kind of laugh that's warm and infectious. So, Ellie, what brings you to this circus? Friends, I said, shrugging. You? Same. Though, I gotta say, it's not often I run into someone here who seems as out of place as I feel. That got a laugh out of me. You? Out of place? Could have fooled me. Josh grinned, leaning against the wall beside me. Well, appearances can be deceiving. So, what do you do when you're not being dragged to parties? I'm a web designer. Work for a big company downtown. That's cool. You any good? I smirked. I hold my own. Our chat rolled on from there, easy and comfortable. He asked about my family at some point, which threw me for a loop. Most guys I met at parties wanted to talk about anything but family. Why the interest in my family? I asked, eyebrow raised. He shrugged, looking a tad uncomfortable for the first time. Dunno. Guess I just find it interesting, knowing where people come from. Makes them more real, you know? I found myself opening up about my dad owning a large company, something I didn't usually lead with. Josh's interest seemed to spike again, but I brushed it off. Maybe he was just being polite. Before I knew it, the party was winding down, and Josh was asking for my number. I'd really like to see you again, Ellie. Maybe in a setting that's a bit less chaotic. I hesitated for a moment, not quite sure why. But then I handed over my number. Sure, why not? Josh had picked me out of all the girls at that party, and I was curious to see where this would go. After that party, things just snowballed. We were inseparable, and before I could even wrap my head around it, he popped the question. 6 months, that's all it took. My folks were over the moon, they took to him like bees to honey. The wedding? Picture perfect. I was floating, draped in white, feeling like the center of Josh's universe. Right after we said our I dose, Dad didn't waste any time getting Josh involved in the family business. Handed him a high-ranking position like it was nothing. Seeing Josh so eager to be a part of it all made me think we had it all figured out. I mean, what could possibly go wrong, right? Then came the dinner that threw me for a loop. We were all sat around my folks' dining table, me, Josh, our son, and my parents, when Dad dropped the news about expanding his business. He was looking at Josh when he said it, like he was passing him the baton in a relay race. Josh, I'm thinking of opening a new branch in the next town over. How'd you like to be the man to head it up? Josh's eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. Seriously, sir? I'd be honored. That's when the conversation took a turn I wasn't ready for. I was already in my head, planning out the move, thinking of apartments, parks where our son could play, and how we'd decorate a new home office for me. Oh, this is gonna be great. I'll start looking at places for us right away. Somewhere close to a good daycare for the little one. That's when Josh threw out his joke. He was all casual about it, like he was commenting on the weather or something. Actually, babe, maybe you should stay here while I set things up. It could take a while, and I know how you hate the hassle of moving. I stared at him, my fork halfway to my mouth, feeling like I'd just hit a speed bump at 60 miles an hour. What do you mean, stay here? Like, not come with you? Yeah, you know, just until I get everything sorted. It's gonna be a lot of late nights, early mornings. Might be easier for you and the kiddo. Easier? For who, exactly? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My folks were silent, probably sensing the tension thickening like gravy. Dad chimed in then, his voice all reason and calm. I think it's best if you all stick together. Ellie can work from anywhere, and it's important to keep the family unit intact, especially with a young child. Josh backed down pretty quick then, probably realizing he was outnumbered. All right, I was just joking. We'll all go together. But something about that joke didn't sit right with me. It was like he'd shown me a card he didn't mean to let slip. The rest of the dinner passed in a kind of blur. I was there, but not really. My mind was stuck on that joke and what it meant. Later, as we were getting ready for bed, I brought it up again. Josh, what was that all about earlier? You really think it's a good idea to start splitting up whenever things get busy? He was brushing his teeth, and he looked at me in the mirror, his eyes meeting mine. Ellie, come on. I told you, it was just a thought. Nothing serious. We're in this together, you know that. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But there was this nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach, like a warning. I pushed it aside, though, telling myself I was overreacting. Josh loved us, and he wouldn't do anything to jeopardize our family. Or so I thought. Josh had to head out for his big business trip a few days after that dinner conversation. We were all set to join him. I even started packing, imagining our new life in a different city. But then, as if fate decided to throw us a curveball, our little one got sick. Nothing too scary at first, just enough for the doc to say traveling was off the table for a while. I remember breaking the news to Josh over the phone. He was already in the other city, and the look on his face, or the lack of it, really, since it was just a call, made me pause. It was almost like he was relieved, happy even, to have the city to himself. That stung, not gonna lie. Weeks turned into more weeks, and our son's little illness turned out to be a bigger deal than we thought. That meant our plans to join Josh were scrapped indefinitely. During this time, Josh's calls became more of a rarity, each one filled with the same old "I'm fine, I miss you guys," but somehow, it felt hollow. One night, after putting the little one to bed, I finally got Josh on a call. "Hey, you," I started, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. "We miss you around here. How's everything going?" There was a pause, a bit too long for comfort, before Josh replied, "Oh, hey, babe. Yeah, everything's busy, you know? This new branch is eating up all my time." I frowned, pacing the living room. "I get that. But you know, a quick call wouldn't kill you. The kiddo keeps asking about you." Another pause, then, I know. I'm sorry. It's a lot right now." That hit me wrong. "A lot right now? Josh, we're supposed to be doing this together. You're not on some solo adventure. We're a family." Josh's voice got a bit defensive. "I didn't say I was doing this alone. Just that it's hectic. I thought we agreed you'd stay put till things settled down here. Let's not do this over the phone, okay? We'll talk when I come home." The call ended on an awkward note, leaving a sour taste in my mouth. The silence of the house seemed to press in on me, heavy with unsaid words and growing doubts. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping through my fingers, something important. He made it back home once during this whole saga, and it was like having a ghost in the house. He was there, but not really. Glued to his phone, barely there even when he was sitting right in front of us. "What's so important on there?" I asked him one night, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. "Just work stuff," he muttered, not even bothering to look up. "Gotta keep things moving at the branch, you know?" But when I tried to get close, to find some comfort in his arms after all this time, he pulled away. "I've missed you," I told him, reaching out. But he just stepped back, mumbling something about being tired. That night, we didn't even share the same bed. When I asked him the next morning what was up, his excuse was he was too tired and not up for tenderness. Too tired. Not up for tenderness. Those words echoed in my head, making me wonder what the hell was happening to us. It was like he was a completely different person. Before I could dig deeper, he was off again, back to the other city, leaving me with a bunch of unanswered questions and a heart heavy with doubt. Just when I thought things couldn't get any stranger, they did. It was a Tuesday, just like any other Tuesday, with me trying to juggle work and keeping an eye on the little one, when there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so you can imagine my surprise when I opened it to find a guy standing there, looking like he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Can I help you?" I asked, wary of this unexpected visitor. "Yeah, I think you can," he said, his voice heavy. "Are you Ellie?" "That's me," I replied, my guard going up. "What's this about?" He took a deep breath, looking down at his feet before meeting my gaze again. "It's about Josh, your husband. My name's Mike, and..." He paused, as if the next words were stuck in his throat. "And my wife's having an affair with him." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What did you just say?" I couldn't have heard him right. Mike swallowed hard, his eyes not leaving mine. "I found out a couple of weeks ago." I didn't want to believe it at first, but then... He trailed off, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a handful of photos. He handed them to me, and as my fingers closed around them, my heart sank. There was Josh, clear as day, looking cozy with some woman I'd never seen before. They were laughing, holding hands, kissing. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. This can't be," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this," Mike said, and he actually looked it. Sorry and tired. I invited him in, more out of a need to sit down than anything else. We sat at the kitchen table, those damning photos spread out between us like the worst kind of puzzle. "How did you find me?" I asked, not sure if I wanted the answer. Mike ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. "Wasn't hard. Once I knew who she was seeing, I did some digging. Found out about Josh's job, his family, you. And you just decided to come here and, what? Tell me my husband's cheating on me?" He leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "Look, I know this is a lot. I'm in the same boat, remember? I thought maybe we could help each other." "Help each other?" I echoed, the idea seeming absurd in the face of everything. "Yeah. I don't know, figure out what to do next. Confront them together? I'm just so damn tired of feeling like a fool." I looked at the photos again, each one a strike to my heart. Josh and this woman, so happy together, while I was here, holding the fort and drowning in loneliness. "I need to think," I said finally, my voice flat. "I need to process this." Mike nodded, standing up. "I get it. Here's my number," he said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "Call me if you want to talk. Or plot. Or whatever." After Mike left, my mind was a whirlwind of anger, hurt, and betrayal. But beneath it all, there was a simmering determination. I wasn't about to let Josh and his mistress get away with tearing our lives apart. So, when I finally picked up the phone and called Mike, it was with a resolve I didn't know I had. "Mike, it's Ellie. I've thought about it, and you're right. We need to do something." There was a pause on the line before he answered. "Ellie, I wasn't sure you'd call. So, what's the plan?" I took a deep breath, my hands shaking. "We catch them in the act. Get the evidence we need to nail them. No more doubts, no more lies." Mike was quiet for a moment, then, "Okay, I'm in. How do we do this?" The next few days were a blur of planning. I left my baby with my parents, saying that I needed to see Josh urgently. Then I found a way to rent an apartment right next to the one where Josh was living with his mistress. It felt like something out of a spy movie, sneaking around, trying to stay under the radar. The day I moved in, Mike came over to help set things up. As we sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by boxes and surveillance equipment, Mike looked at me. "You sure about this, Ellie? There's no turning back after?" I nodded, my jaw set. I've never been more sure about anything. He's not getting away with this. We spent hours setting up, going over every detail of how we'd catch them. The walls were thin, which worked in our favor, allowing us to hear nearly everything from the next apartment. The waiting was the hardest part. Days passed with little to no activity, then, finally, we heard them. Josh and his mistress, their voices carrying through the walls, laughing, talking like they didn't have a care in the world. It was nauseating. Mike and I exchanged looks, the reality of the situation sinking in. "This is it," he whispered, his hand reaching for the recorder. We captured everything, every lie, every intimate moment. It was more than enough to prove their affair, but we needed the final piece of the puzzle. We needed to catch them physically together, in the act. That opportunity came sooner than we expected. We overheard Josh ordering delivery, their casual banter about what to watch on Netflix filtering through the walls. "This is our chance," I said, my heart pounding. "You knock, pretend to be the delivery guy." Mike left, and I waited, my heart in my throat. Moments later, there was a knock at their door, followed by the surprised voices of Josh and his mistress. Walking into that apartment, my heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to break free. Josh and his mistress were caught off guard, the surprise written all over their faces. Josh was the first to recover, though his voice shook as he spoke. "Ellie, what are you doing here?" I crossed my arms, my gaze flicking between him and the woman wrapped in a sheet on the couch. Really, Josh? You're going to stand there and play dumb? His mistress, now realizing who I was, tried to shrink into the couch, her eyes wide with fear. Mike stepped forward, his voice was ice cold. We know everything, Josh. You and her. He nodded towards the woman. Have been sneaking around behind our backs. Josh's face went pale, his usual smooth charm nowhere to be seen. Look, Ellie, I can explain. Save it, I snapped, cutting him off. We've got all the proof we need. Isn't that right, Mike? Mike held up his phone, the recording's just a tap away. Everything. Conversations, pictures. You two didn't do a great job of covering your tracks. Josh looked desperate now, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. Ellie, please, let's just talk about this. We can work it out. Work it out? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think after this, we can just work it out? The mistress suddenly erupted. He said he never loved you. Said he was stuck in a marriage he didn't want, all because of your dad's money. That's the only reason he chose you. Her words, meant to wound, only confirmed my suspicions. I looked at Josh, really looked at him, and saw the truth. This is over, Josh. I'll be filing for divorce. And don't think you're walking away from this without consequences. Your affair will cost you. Big time. My dad will hear about this, and yes, he will fire you, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Josh's face crumbled, the reality of the situation finally hitting him. Ellie, please. We can sort this out, just don't tell him, okay? I turned my back on him, on them. There's nothing left to say. Come on, Mike. Let's go. Following the tumultuous confrontation, life seemed to enter a surreal phase, like walking through a dream, or more accurately, emerging from a nightmare. The first few days were a blur of legal consultations, tearful conversations with my parents, and sleepless nights spent reassessing every moment of my marriage to Josh. My dad's reaction was a mix of fury and heartbreak. That snake, he bellowed when I told him everything. He's out. I don't care about the legalities, he'll not work another day in my company. Thanks, Dad, I murmured, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that my father stood by me unwaveringly, and sadness for the loss of what I once thought I had with Josh. The process of divorce was surprisingly swift, given Josh's eagerness to avoid any more public humiliation than necessary. He signed the papers without a fight, a shell of the confident man I once knew. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into work and taking care of my son, finding solace in routine and the laughter of my little boy. He was my beacon of hope, reminding me daily that there was still joy to be found, even in the midst of pain. Josh attempted to reach out once, a text that read, Ellie, I'm sorry, can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. There was nothing left to say. The divorce was finalized quietly, without the drama I feared. I received full custody of our son and the house, while Josh was ordered to pay a substantial amount in child support and alimony. My father made good on his word, and Josh was ousted from the company, his career in shambles. Months later, as I sat in a cafe watching the rain patter against the window, I reflected on how far I'd come. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was mingled with a sense of pride in my resilience and a newfound independence. Mike walked in, shaking off an umbrella, and joined me at the table. How are you holding up? He asked, his concern genuine. Better, I admitted, managing a small smile. It's been a roller coaster, but I'm getting there. How about you? He shrugged, a wry smile on his face. Same. It's a process, right? But seeing you, it helps, knowing we both made it through the storm. We talked for hours, sharing our hopes for the future and laughing over the absurdity of our shared past. It was comforting, this new friendship forged from the ashes of our respective betrayals. The months after the divorce and Josh's departure from our lives felt like slowly waking up from a long, troubled sleep. My world, once darkened by betrayal and hurt, gradually brightened as I focused on rebuilding my life with my son. The routine of daily life, once a mundane chore, now brought comfort and a sense of accomplishment. One crisp autumn afternoon, as I watched my son play in the park, my phone buzzed. It was Mike. "Hey, Ellie, how about a coffee catch-up? On me this time," his message read. I smiled, typing back. "Sure, sounds good. When and where?" "Let's say tomorrow? The little cafe near the park, around 10? "Perfect. See you then," I replied. Sitting across from Mike the next day, with the smell of coffee and the sound of light chatter around us, I felt a sense of ease I hadn't known for a while. "So, how have you been, really?" Mike asked, his eyes searching mine for the truth beneath the polite small talk. "I'm actually good," I said, surprised at the realization. "It's been tough, but I think I'm finally moving forward." Mike nodded, a small smile on his lips. "I can see that. You look lighter, somehow." The conversation flowed easily between us, filled with laughter, shared stories, and the occasional comfortable silence. It was during one of these silences that Mike looked at me, hesitating before speaking. "Ellie, I've been wanting to tell you something," he started, his voice serious. "Throughout all this mess, getting to know you has been the silver lining for me." I felt my heart skip a beat, unsure of where he was going with this. He took a deep breath. "What I'm trying to say is, I like you, Ellie. More than just a friend." The confession hung in the air between us, charged with possibility. I looked at Mike, really looked at him, seeing the man who had stood by me through the darkest of times, who made me laugh when I thought I'd never be able to again. "Mike, I started, my emotions a whirlwind." I didn't expect to hear that. But I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about us, too. As we left the cafe, walking side by side, I felt a flutter of excitement for the first time in a long while. The path ahead was uncertain, and the scars of the past still lingered, but for the first time, I felt ready to explore the possibility of a new beginning. "Here's to new beginnings," Mike said, raising an imaginary glass as we reached the park where my son played. "To new beginnings," I echoed, my heart full of hope. The laughter of my son reached us, a sweet melody that filled the air around us. As I watched him play, I realized that while the past would always be a part of me, it no longer defined me. I was moving forward, step by step, into a future that was mine to shape. And as Mike and I stood there, watching my son together, I couldn't help but feel that, maybe, just maybe, we were stepping into that future together. My first day at the company felt like walking into a storm, not knowing if I'd make it out. The place buzzed with energy, folks rushing about with papers, phones glued to their ears, and the clack of keyboards nonstop. There I was, in my new blazer, trying to blend into the chaos, feeling like a sheep lost in the city. "Hey, you must be the new manager." "I'm Mark, head of the department." "You got a name, or should I just call you Newbie?" A voice cut through the noise, pulling me back to reality. I turned to face him, Mark, the guy I heard so much about. Tall, with a smirk that probably got him in and out of trouble, and eyes sharp as knives. "I'm Julie," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "And I'd prefer Julie over Newbie." He laughed, a deep sound that somehow made the room seem less intimidating. "All right, Julie, let's see if you can keep up. This place waits for no one. You ready to dive in, or you gonna stand there looking scared?" His blunt words stung a bit, but I knew this was the real deal. No sugarcoating, no hand-holding. I was here to make a mark, not to be coddled. "I'm ready. Just show me where to start." Mark's smirk turned into a slight smile, one that said he might have underestimated me. "Come on, then. I'll show you the ropes. But don't expect me to go easy on you. You'll have to earn your keep here." As we walked through the maze of desks and buzzing lights, Mark rattled off names and projects, his words a rapid fire that I struggled to catch. "And another thing, don't expect everyone to play nice. This isn't kindergarten. It's a battlefield. You got the guts for it?" I nodded, feeling the weight of his gaze. I didn't come here to play. I'm here to work and to win. Good answer. Let's see if you mean it. Mark led me to my new office, a small space with a window overlooking the city. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, deadlines, and learning curves steep enough to give anyone vertigo. Mark was relentless, always pushing, always demanding more. But behind the tough exterior, I caught glimpses of something else, a teacher, maybe even a friend. Julie, this report looks like it was written by a 5-year-old. Do it again, Mark would say, tossing the papers on my desk without a second glance. Or, you're gonna let Johnson talk over you like that? Stand up for your ideas, or they'll walk all over you. It was tough love, the kind that grated but also grew on you. Mark wasn't just teaching me about the job, he was showing me how to survive in a world where you're only as good as your last success. One evening, after the office had emptied and the city lights danced in the darkness, Mark knocked on my office door, a couple of beers in hand. You did good today, Julie. Didn't think you had it in you to stand up to Johnson like that. I took the beer, our fingers brushing slightly. Thanks, Mark. Means a lot, coming from you. We sat in silence for a moment, the city's hum a backdrop to our thoughts. This place can chew you up and spit you out if you're not careful, Mark said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard. But you, I think you might just make it. Because of your tough love? I teased, taking a sip of the beer. He chuckled, leaning back in his chair. Maybe. Or maybe you're just as stubborn and hard-headed as I am. As the weeks turned into months, Mark and I found ourselves tangled in something more complicated than mentorship. Our after-hours chats turned into dinners, and those dinners turned into more. We knew the stakes, office romances were a big no-no, a taboo that could cost us both our jobs. But the heart wants what it wants, doesn't it? Julie, we're playing with fire here, Mark would whisper, his voice heavy with a mix of desire and caution, after one of our secret meetups. I know, but I can't help it, I'd respond, my heart racing, feeling the thrill and the danger all at once. Let's just keep this between us. No one has to know. And so, our secret affair began. We became experts at hiding our feelings in the daylight, saving them for the shadows where we could be ourselves, if only for a moment. The risk made everything more intense, but it was a game of Russian roulette. Every stolen kiss, every whispered promise, was a bullet in the chamber, and we were both playing with the trigger. Life's funny, you know? One minute, you're sneaking around, trying to hide your love like it's some kind of contraband, and the next, you're facing a moment that could change everything. That's exactly how it went down with Mark and me. It was a Thursday evening, the kind of evening that didn't seem special until it suddenly was. We were at my place, a modest apartment that had become our little sanctuary away from the prying eyes of the world. The air was filled with the smell of the spaghetti I had cooked, a simple dish, but Mark swore it was the best he'd ever had. Julie, you know, this sneaking around is getting old, Mark said out of the blue, his fork pausing mid-air. His voice was casual, but his eyes were anything but. I chuckled, thinking he was about to crack a joke. What do you suggest, a billboard announcing Mark and Julie's love shack? He didn't laugh. Instead, he put his fork down and took my hand, his touch sending a familiar thrill up my arm. I'm serious, Julie. I've been thinking. Why don't we just make this official? Marry me, Julie. Let's stop hiding. The words hit me like a bolt of lightning. Marry him? Was he serious? My heart started racing, and a part of me wanted to say yes, before my brain could catch up. But then, reality kicked in. Mark, you know we can't. The company. Screw the company. He cut in, his usual calm replaced with a passion I hadn't seen before. I love you, and I'm tired of pretending like you're not the most important part of my life. We'll figure it out. We always do. His words, so raw and honest, melted any reservations I had. How could I say no to a man who was willing to risk it all for us? Yes, I whispered, the word barely making it out, before Mark pulled me into a kiss that sealed our promise. The next day was a whirlwind. We knew we had to face the music and tell our boss about our decision. The company had strict rules about relationships in the workplace, and one of us would have to leave. But at that moment, nothing felt impossible as long as we were together. "Mr. Reynolds, we have something to tell you," Mark started, his hand gripping mine under the table as we sat across from our boss in his imposing office. Mr. Reynolds looked up from his paperwork, his gaze sharp. "I'm listening." Mark squeezed my hand, a silent source of strength, and then laid it all out. "Julie and I are getting married. We know the company's policy, and we're prepared to deal with the consequences." Mr. Reynolds didn't seem surprised. If anything, he looked like a man who had seen it all. "I appreciate your honesty. You know the rules. One of you will have to resign." Mark was quick to lay down how it was going to be, his voice firm, brooking no argument. "It's going to be Julie who resigns. I've got the career and the salary that we need to keep things going strong. She'll stay home, take care of our future." I didn't say anything at first, the weight of his words sinking in. Part of me wanted to argue, to say we should find another way. But then, the resolve in Mark's eyes told me this was the decision he believed was best for us. "All right," I said finally, my voice steady. "If that's what we've decided, then I'll resign." The ride back from Mr. Reynolds' office was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts. Mark kept trying to reassure me, saying it was for the best, but the silence between us spoke volumes. "Julie, you know this is the right move, right? My job's the stable one. It just makes sense," Mark finally said, breaking the silence as we stood at the door of our shared future. I looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt. But all I saw was certainty. "I know, Mark. It's just a big change, that's all. But we'll make it work. We always do." The honeymoon phase in our suburban home didn't last long. At first, it was all laughter and shared dreams, but then the atmosphere started to change, and not for the better. Mark began to show a side of him I hadn't seen before, a side that expected everything to be just so, perfect and without a single flaw. One evening, as I was trying to get dinner ready after spending the day cleaning the house, Mark came home early. The house smelled like the roast I had in the oven, and I thought it would cheer him up. I was wrong. "Julie, what's this?" Mark's voice cut through the quiet of the kitchen, sharp and cold. I turned to see him holding a plate with a slight frown. "It's dinner, Mark. I tried a new recipe I thought you'd like," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice. He took a bite and immediately made a face. "This is what you call dinner? It's bland. Can't you do anything right?" He dumped the plate into the trash with a clatter that made me jump. I felt a sting of tears in my eyes, but I fought them back. "I'm sorry, Mark. I'll make something else," I murmured, turning back to the stove, my hands shaking slightly. "No, forget it. I'm not hungry anymore." His words were a dismissal, and he stormed off to the living room, leaving me alone with my failed dish and a sinking heart. But it didn't stop there. Mark's demands grew by the day. If a shirt wasn't ironed to his liking, it ended up thrown on the floor. If he found a single speck of dust, he'd make a show of wiping it up with his finger and then wave it in front of my face. "What do I keep you around for if you can't even keep the house clean?" he'd say, and each word felt like a slap. One night, he came home late to find me asleep on the couch, waiting up for him. The TV was still on, a low hum in the quiet room. He woke me up, not gently, but by snatching the blanket away. "Why are you sleeping? The house is a mess," he barked, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of disorder. I rubbed my eyes, confused and tired. "Mark, it's 2 a.m. What mess are you talking about?" He didn't answer, just stomped off to our bedroom, leaving me to wonder what I had missed. The next morning, I found a list on the kitchen counter, items he expected to be done by the time he got back. It was like living with a ticking time bomb, never knowing what would set him off next. I tried to talk to him about it one evening, tried to understand where all this was coming from. "Mark, can we talk?" It feels like you're always angry with me. What's going on? He just looked at me, cold and distant. There's nothing to talk about. I work all day, and I expect to come home to a clean house and a decent meal. Is that too much to ask? But I'm trying my best, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Clearly, your best isn't good enough. And with that, he left the room, leaving me standing there, feeling smaller and more alone than ever. My attempts to stand up for myself didn't go unnoticed, but they sure didn't go unpunished either. After one particularly heated argument where I dared suggest a divorce, thinking maybe the threat of it would shake him up, he retaliated in a way I hadn't expected. You want to play tough, Julie? Fine. Let's see how you manage without access to the bank accounts. Mark spat out, his face twisted in anger. The next day, I found out he wasn't bluffing. My card was declined at the grocery store, leaving me mortified and empty-handed. When I confronted him about it, his response chilled me to the bone. Learn your place, Julie. You don't threaten me. You need to understand who's in charge here. Stuck in a house with dwindling supplies, I felt my independence slipping away. Mark carried on as usual, unaffected, dining out for lunch and dinner, while I was left to scrounge around for whatever was left in the pantry. Feeling desperate, I broached the topic of divorce again, hoping maybe this time it would bring some sense into him. Surprisingly, it did, but not in the way I expected. Divorce? Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what that would do to my reputation? He hissed. Yet, the day after that conversation, Mark did a complete 180. He came home with flowers, something he hadn't done since our early days, and even arranged a romantic dinner at home, just for the two of us. For a moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the turning point. Maybe he realized what he stood to lose. Maybe this was him trying to make amends. But like a mirage, that hope vanished as quickly as it appeared. The gentle, attentive man who brought me flowers was gone, replaced once again by the cold, demanding stranger I'd come to live with. It was a cruel game of emotional whiplash, one that left me more confused and isolated than ever. Mark's parents, bless their hearts, saw none of this. To them, we were the picture-perfect couple, living out a suburban dream. Whenever they came around, I played the part, smiling and nodding, while Mark played the doting husband. But heaven forbid I slip up, show a crack in the facade. The consequences, as Mark liked to remind me, were swift. One night, after his parents left from one of their visits, Mark decided my performance hadn't been up to par. You could have been a bit more enthusiastic tonight. My parents think we're happy, Julie. Don't ruin that, he said, his tone icy. When I tried to defend myself, to explain that I was doing my best, it only angered him more. Your best? That's your best? Maybe you need a night on the sofa to think about what your best really means. And just like that, I found myself banished from our bedroom, lying on the sofa in the dark, wondering how my life had come to this. Winter hit hard that year, turning the streets into skating rinks overnight. I remember thinking I should be careful as I headed out to the store, but caution wasn't enough to keep me on my feet. I slipped on the ice, felt a sharp pain, and then nothing but the cold seeping through my coat as I lay there, waiting for help. Passers-by were quick to call an ambulance, and I spent the day in a blur of x-rays and doctors telling me I'd broken my leg. By the time they put me in a cast and sent me home, it was already dark. I tried calling Mark from the hospital, tried to tell him what happened, but all I got was his voicemail. So, I sent him a message and hoped he'd understand. The taxi dropped me off at our house, and I hobbled to the door, leaning heavily on my crutches. The moment Mark opened the door, I knew something was wrong. His face was twisted in anger, not concern. Where have you been? I come home to no dinner, and you're nowhere to be found, he barked, before even greeting me. I was in shock, pain throbbing through my leg, as I tried to explain. Mark, I broke my leg. I've been in the hospital all day. Look. I lifted the edge of my coat to show him the cast, thinking surely this would soften his anger. But it didn't. Excuses, Julie. Always excuses with you. A broken leg is no reason for laziness, he snapped back, as if my injury was a personal inconvenience to him. Tears pricked my eyes, not just from the pain but from the utter disbelief. Mark, I can't cook or clean properly like this. Maybe we could hire an au pair, just for the 3 months until I'm better? His response was a laugh, short and bitter. Spend my money because you can't do your duties? No way. You'll just have to manage. And just like that, I was left to fend for myself. Cooking was a nightmare, each step a new level of pain. Cleaning was even worse, trying to balance on crutches while wiping down surfaces and sweeping floors. Mark watched me struggle every day, offering no help, only criticism if something wasn't up to his standard. That was my breaking point. Not the fall, not the broken leg, but the realization that the man I married had so little compassion, so little love left for me. I was more than just hurt, I was broken, not just physically, but deep down where it mattered most. It was a day like any other, or so I thought, hobbling around on one leg, trying to keep the house up to Mark's impossible standards. The pain was a constant companion, but on that day, it was overshadowed by a growing sense of defiance. I'd reached my limit, fed up with the way Mark treated me, especially after the incident with the trash. I'd forgotten to take it out, a simple mistake, but Mark turned it into a spectacle. He came home, saw the full trash can, and without a word, dumped it right there on the floor next to me. Clean it up, he ordered, his voice cold as ice. I did as he said, fighting back tears, the pain in my leg burning with each step I took to tidy his mess. That night, I couldn't sleep, thoughts racing through my head. By morning, my decision was made. I confronted him with divorce papers, my hand trembling, but my resolve firm. Mark just laughed, a sound that made my blood boil. You think you can scare me with divorce? He scoffed, taking the papers, but not looking at them. This time I'm not scaring you, Mark. I'm serious, I said, meeting his gaze, trying to convey just how much I meant it. His laughter stopped, replaced by a smirk. Fine, I'll sign them. But let's do this properly, go to a lawyer in the city. I should have known it was too easy, too smooth. But I was desperate to be free, to end this nightmare. So, I agreed, and we drove together. Halfway there, on the highway, he pulled over, mumbling some excuse about the wheel needing air. Get out for a sec, he said. I trusted him. I got out. And then, before I could even realize what was happening, he drove off, leaving me there, alone and stranded with my broken leg in the biting cold. Panic set in, but I had to act. I called him, using the recording function on my phone, because I needed evidence, proof of this cruelty. Mark, come back. This isn't funny, I said, my voice shaking from cold and fear. His laughter crackled through the phone, icy and sharp. Facing the consequences of your decision, Julie. You want to be independent? Solve this yourself. And then he hung up. I was left standing there on the side of the road, cars whizzing by, my heart sinking. Betrayed, abandoned, but most of all, determined. That's when a car pulled up. To my surprise, it was my former boss, Mr. Reynolds, who also happened to be Mark's boss. His brow furrowed in concern as he rolled down the window. Julie, what on earth are you doing out here, especially in this condition? He asked, his voice laced with worry. I hesitated, not sure where to start or how much to share. But then, the floodgates opened. I told him everything, how Mark had been treating me, the accident, and finally, how he left me stranded on the side of the highway with a broken leg. The words poured out, raw and unfiltered. Mr. Reynolds' expression darkened with each word I said. This is unacceptable, Julie. Get in the car. We're going to sort this out, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He drove me to his office, offering me a hot coffee that warmed my hands but couldn't touch the chill in my bones. After I settled in, he excused himself for a moment. I didn't know what he planned, but I trusted him. He returned shortly, mentioning he had invited Mark over under the guise of an urgent meeting. When Mark walked in and saw me, his face went white as a sheet. Julie? What? Sit down, Mark. We have a lot to discuss, Mr. Reynolds interrupted, his voice calm but with an edge that made Mark comply without a word. Mr. Reynolds didn't mince his words. Mark, I've been informed of your behavior, both as a husband and indirectly as an employee. It's inexcusable. I can't have someone who exhibits such cruelty on my team. You're fired. Mark tried to defend himself, throwing a panicked look my way. Julie, tell him you're exaggerating. This is just a misunderstanding. That's when I played the recording of our last conversation, the one where he left after abandoning me on the highway. The room fell silent as my voice and Mark's laughter filled the space. There was nothing left for him to say. He knew it, I knew it, and Mr. Reynolds knew it. Mark left the office, head hung low, the finality of the situation settling around us like a heavy cloak. Mr. Reynolds turned to me, his expression softening. Julie, I'm so sorry you went through this. If there's anything I can do. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Just this. Listening to me, believing me. It's more than I could have asked for, I said, the weight of the past months starting to lift ever so slightly. He nodded, understanding. You're welcome here, Julie. Take some time to heal, and if you ever want to come back, your job is waiting for you. Finally, it was over. The court didn't just grant me the divorce, they ordered Mark to pay me $100,000 for all the hell he put me through. Having that recording was a game changer. It was the undeniable proof that swung everything in my favor. When Mark's parents heard the whole story, they couldn't even look him in the eye. They came to me, all apologies and sorrowful faces. We're so sorry, Julie. We had no idea. I told them straight. You've got nothing to apologize for. It's not your fault he turned out this way. But inside, I felt a bitter sort of satisfaction knowing they saw Mark for who he really was. Losing his job was the cherry on top. Mr. Reynolds didn't waste any time showing Mark the door, and he made a point of telling me I was welcome back anytime. So, I went back to work, back to something resembling a normal life. It felt good, walking into the office, knowing I'd stood my ground and came out the other side stronger. With the divorce settlement, I rented a cozy apartment, a little place just for me. It wasn't just a new home, it was a fresh start, a place where the shadows of my marriage to Mark couldn't reach me. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the memory of Mark and all the pain he caused began to fade. I threw myself into work, into rebuilding myself and my life. I made new friends, rediscovered hobbies I'd forgotten I loved, and began to enjoy life again, on my own terms. Sometimes, colleagues would tiptoe around the subject of my divorce, but I'd just laugh it off. That chapter's closed, I'd tell them. I'm all about the next adventure now. And it was true. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my destiny. Mark had tried to break me, but in the end, he was just a footnote in my story, a bad memory fading into insignificance.